to order, please. Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll read the school district's mission statement. Grounded by our history as one of the oldest publicly supported schools in Wisconsin, Mineral Point School District is the heart of a small community that educates and inspires our students for a bright future in a big world. Angie, roll call.
Bush.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Heisner.
Here.
Janetka.
Here.
Skelding.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here. Okay, first we'll start with recognitions.
So this fall, we had some excitement here in the Mineral Point School District. We had an FFA team go to Indianapolis and place in the silver area. And then we had a boys and girls cross country team compete in Wisconsin Rapids. I know Coach McGraw is online. Coach McGraw, would you like to say a few things about your cross country experience?
Technology. I see Haley Kearns on. Maybe she'd like to say a few words first. Haley, you'll have to unmute and go ahead.
Yeah, I can say a few words. So I'm Haley Kearns, and I'm a senior at Mineral Point High School. I am speaking on behalf of the Mineral Point Dodge Point cross country team. First off, I want to say thank you for recognizing the cross country team tonight. It's been an amazing season, and I'm excited that we got to end on a high note by winning state. It was a great experience for both the boys and girls team that made it to state. Also, I want to give a big thank you to our amazing coaches, parents, and teammates that made this year a great one. It was a pretty good experience at the state since it was my senior year, and it kind of meant a lot. It was just overall an amazing experience. So thank you.
Thanks, Haley.
Also, first day of practice, Joe Hansen had the, if they were first year out or if they were freshmen, it was 75% of our team. So that was quite amazing, the run they had. Also, I guess I should back up a little. Thanks to the Mineral Point administration, principal, the staff, and most of all the awesome runners. I'd like to thank the school board for recognizing everyone. A little bit about the fan base up there was absolutely incredible. These girls and boys teams waltzed through the sectional. It was actually, I don't think we've had that big a margin in the number of years. The community support from both communities has been just unbelievable. The boys did a great job. The boys at the mile mark were in 10th place. And I know a lot of people follow along on PT timing. At the 2 mile mark, they were in 8th place and ended up 5th place. They just did an incredible job. And they went first, and then the girls were the 4th race of the day. So after that, we told the girls they had to get out a little quicker, and they did. The girls at the first mile, they were in first place. They had 100 points, and Shorewood, the team that's been ranked number 1 all year that we had to beat, they had 126 points. At the 2 mile mark, we had dropped to 97 points. Shorewood was 108. They were gaining on us. At 5,000 meters at the finish, we were 88 and they were 89. When that came up on the Jumbotron, the place just exploded. It was actually, you just have to be there. I'm just getting goosebumps talking about it. It's incredible. So happy for the kids, for the parents, for the coaches. And I see Heather's on. Joe is going to try to make it. But with these two communities coming together, we get to meet all these wonderful young ladies and gentlemen, the parents, and it's just incredible. So we want to thank you. Heather, do you have anything to add? You have to unmute. On the bottom left.
No, everything you said is, again, when we look at these teams, we have of the 14 that ran, we have 7 from Point and 7 from Dodgeville. So it really is a true two-school team effort. So again, I'm just glad that the schools are combined because it really makes a great team. And the boys team too, just 5th place. That was kind of a Cinderella story. We didn't expect that. So thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. What a great season. You continue to make us proud.
It's a pretty special thing for sure. I've seen the Robinson family, not just the kids. I've seen the Robinson family numerous days out preparing for this, and I'm sure the rest of the team do too. And it's really good to see kids that work that hard come up with their goals.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, that's the end of recognitions.
Yes.
Okay, so now I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from the regular 10-11 meeting and the special board meeting, certify the levy.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
That's for both meetings.
Both meetings.
Yeah.
For both meetings.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, Angie?
Janetka,
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes. With communications, start with board communications received. We're on the horn with Joni.
Yeah, so like everyone on the board, I received several emails this week, and I won't go into details. I am certain that those will come out later in our conversation. And then I did have in particular one phone call relating to one of the emails, but just really emphasizing the burden that we're putting on our kids, particularly kids who have been in a situation where they are being tested repeatedly because they're in a group that keeps coming up as close contact. And so kids that have spent the better part of a month having to come to school and test every day before they can start their school day. And so we can discuss that more when we get to that point in the agenda.
Same, nothing more to add to that?
I received quite a few emails from both sides, some emails from staff members on both sides. One email that really bothers me more so is the fact that an elementary educator that is asking their children to raise their hands if their parents have been vaccinated. I guess I'd like an answer as to how is that part of any child's education in a public school? What part does that have to do with education? I'm guessing by the lack of answer.
Mitch, you want to briefly comment on
I
that?
would say it has no part. That's not part of the education system. And when I saw the email, that's the first I was aware of that as well. So there will be follow-up on that. But yes, I agree that has no place in our education system.
And then I was sitting there on one of the beautiful days we were combining. And we got a phone call. I think all board members got a phone call from Madison newspaper about a school board member. And it really hit me hard. Like, we're going through one of the best harvest seasons ever seen. And we lost a board member, and somebody from the community felt the need to call the Madison newspaper and tell them about it. And that's just extremely disappointing that somebody felt the need to do that. And I'm sitting here as a board member and I had to take that phone call. I didn't sign up for this crap. I would think people would have a little more respect for a family than that.
I got similar emails, concerned about the COVID mitigation plan and quarantine, repeated close contacts, repeated testing, just lots of understandable frustration from that. And then, a lot of encouraging emails to just reassuring that they think we're doing the right thing and we're trying to reach a compromise. And I appreciated all the emails I got. Bob.
Yes, I of course received all the emails we all received. Also, a few people just coming up to me on both sides telling me their thoughts about masking. I have to say, I've been really impressed with the emails we've been receiving. A lot of them actually have a lot of wonderful ideas, things to grow on, which is nice to see. I also received some nonverbal communications. My house was toilet papered, which I know that happens frequently. But my house is also masked, so people put hundreds of masks on my property, on my cars. It's fine if people think that's the best way to communicate. I don't like that method of communication. I'm out and about. People are, please talk to me. Also, so by the same token, it was actually picked up before I even saw it. So I had 3 people tell me it happened. But some people had gone and actually picked it all up. So in light of that, I would guess that the people who put the mask there would like to see the mask policy and all our COVID medication policies probably go away. And the people who picked them up are probably supporting it. Just like to say that, and please, if anybody sees me out and about, always feel welcome to talk to me. Words go on further than waste. So.
I'm sorry that happened. Andy.
Yeah, I received a ton of communication. One here I'll read shortly, and received a few sets of communication shortly after a couple Facebook posts on the community page. I got rid of my social media, so I didn't see it, but one of them pretty insightful based on some infactual information. So I guess I would just request, no matter which side you're on, if you're gonna try and incite people who agree with you or disagree with you, just make sure your accusations of the district and the board are true, and maybe double check the policies before you make your posts. Leads to a lot of upset people making phone calls that are even more upset to find out they wasted their time, because sometimes it's right there in the second bullet point of the protocol. So that, and then I did have a request to read email aloud, which I will. This is from Sarah Severud, who lives at 325 Maiden Street in Mineral Point. To whom it may concern. Greetings. I'm writing on behalf of my 4th and 2nd grade students who attend Mineral Point Elementary School. 600 or so days ago, my children walked out of their respective 2nd grade and kindergarten classes at Mokapu Elementary School on Marine Corps Base, Hawaii. At the time, they were told if they followed the rules, wore a mask, isolated, and were patient, that 2 weeks to slow the spread would be over and they could return to some sense of social normalcy. At the exact same time, I reached out to the Mineral Point Elementary School to discuss future enrollment. I could see the writing on the wall with Hawaii schools and pulled our children to homeschool until we could return to Wisconsin. 1 year later, we made the difficult decision to leave my husband in Hawaii on the premise that it was essential for our children's development to be in an environment in which they could go to school, interact with other children as well as adults, and be home in Wisconsin. Since we arrived in Wisconsin and put our children into summer school in the district, we have overlooked several red flags and negative experiences. When my daughter's entire class was asked during school hours to raise their hands if their parents were vaccinated against COVID-19, then lectured about how important it was, I told my husband that it wasn't time to make a scene. When the mask matrix was formed, I told my husband it wasn't time to make a scene, as at least there was a chance that the kids wouldn't have to wear masks. When we were notified the day before Halloween weekend that my daughter was a close contact, we made the decision to alter our Halloween plans in the name of being considerate, and our daughter chose to test every day. Even my children could see there was no logical explanation in the idea that one was a close contact and had to test, but the sibling could go about as though they were not, but they still complied. When we were notified that my son was a close contact with a probable case, I told my husband that it wasn't the time to make a scene, even though I questioned why or how this notification would impact us. When the school shut down for an entire day on very short notice for contact tracing, I told my husband it wasn't the time to make a scene because the administration was just doing their best. All along, every step of the way, I told my children that masking and when need be testing would be worth it because at least they were able to go to school. Better than Hawaii, I would remind them. I had faith that at least they were getting a routine, and my children felt as if they followed the rules, they would finally be able to keep a semblance of normalcy in attending a school when they are not sick. That was until today. I was notified yesterday that my son was now in close contact with a confirmed case, and he was wary of taking the COVID tests. I went and picked him up, brought him home, talked to him a lot about how if he wasn't COVID positive and could prove as such with the test, then he could continue to be with his friends in his classroom and learn. He reluctantly agreed to go back and get tested, but was really looking forward to going to class on his birthday on Monday and was proud of himself for making the right decision. When we were notified today that there would no longer be an in-school quarantine option, and thus my son would not be able to go to school next week, he was heartbroken. Monday is his birthday. Beyond that, he cannot comprehend how or why his sister isn't considered a close contact and she can continue to go to school. And I cannot explain it to him. Now I told my husband it's the time to make a scene. The entire mask matrix and COVID protocol this year has radiated incompetence and placating to a subset of the district population that hurled insults and fear with no room for compromise. There's absolutely no logical explanation for the close contact protocol or the vaccinated versus unvaccinated protocol and their differences. You have siblings across multiple grades, whereas one is being quarantined, and yet the other is not, when they're in close contact with their siblings for considerably more hours than any other school contact. When well documented, the vaccine does not prevent infection nor the spread of the virus, and this will not reach eradication for masking, social distancing, nor vaccination. The subset of the population that this virus most severely impacts has had access to the vaccine and now boosters for months. I will vehemently argue that the negative impact of the protocol to attempt to quell the virus is exponentially more harmful to our children than the actual virus itself. We're not talking about just masks or distancing or tests. No, we are now talking about entire impacts to families who are struggling to make ends meet after a pandemic, only have to take off work or arrange for childcare for at least 5 weekdays out of the past 2 weeks. In our instance, for one sibling, while the other attends school as if there is some magical barrier when they walk off school property that stops virus transmission, 600 days of uncertainty, random rule changes, goalpost moving, division, and nonsensical isolation. I'm pleading with the district to take a hard, unbiased look at what the current climate of uncertainty, inconsistency, and arbitrary rule is doing to our children. Outside of school, the majority are unmasked, commingling, thriving as they did all summer. I've heard school board members and administrators express that they must continue to abide by the fear-driven or risk losing students in the district. I understand that they are in an unwinnable position that has been thrown in their lap by the pandemic. However, it is time to admit that these protocols are inconsistent and unsustainable at best. It is my fervent belief that we should be treating this as any other virus at this point. Symptoms equate action. It is time to stop living in fear. Today, for the second time in 1 week, I had to explain to my son that we must alter our plans. As a military child, he is accustomed to his father missing all kinds of milestones. He knows what it is like to be flexible and resilient. Today he cried, "But Mama, I'm not sick. But Mama, I followed the rules. But Mama, I wore my mask. But Mama, I missed Halloween even when I wasn't in close contact because it was the right thing to do. But Mama, I took the test. But Mama, I missed my teacher. But Mama, if I don't get to go to school, can we just go back to be with Daddy?" It is heartbreaking, damaging, and unacceptable. I worked extremely hard to give my children a sense of morality and duty to do the right thing to protect others and follow protocol while not instilling fear. I have been a proponent for personal choice and understanding of those who are fearful. I've been diligent and purposeful in keeping my children moderate in their attitude about COVID-19. At this juncture, though, enough is enough, and I'm seriously considering removing my children from the district we love that we have wanted to be in for years. I'm respectfully requesting to place a mitigation plan on Monday's school board agenda to be revoked. I'm wise enough to acknowledge that the mask matrix is something that will not be revoked in the immediate future. However, it should be the immediate action of revoking the mitigation plan and replacing with a common sense approach that includes the following from the elementary school parent-student handbook, subject student health, pages 35, 36, which in part states, the school has a legal right to exclude any child from school if he or she is ill or has an infection that is contagious. To protect our school community, students with known contagious diseases are excluded from attending school until they provide a doctor's release. When a student comes to the nurse's office during school hours with an illness, his or her temperature will be taken and other symptoms assessed. If the temperature is above 100 degrees or the student is vomiting, has diarrhea, an undiagnosed rash, discoloration or drainage in the eyes, suspected communicable disease, or head lice, the parent guardian must pick up the student. The student must be fever-free for 24 hours without the use of medication before returning to school. It is absolutely unethical to treat children who are not sick as if they were, thereby denying them an in-person education arbitrarily. It is furthermore impossible to sustain this mitigation plan financially, emotionally, or logistically for both the employees of the district as well as the families and students of the district. I appreciate your time and consideration in this matter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to citizen communications. First is it? I'm sorry, is it Cyril Letty? Is you? Did I say your name right?
No.
Tell me.
Sorella.
Sorella, thank you. The floor is yours. Would you mind, are you able to stand right here so that everyone can see you from home and hear you?
Well, all I wanted to say was I could hear when she took roll call from you guys. Otherwise, with your mask on or anything, we come here to a school board meeting and can't hear nothing. Would you please get some microphones? That's all I have to say.
Okay.
And
So-
we're here because we love our children and we believe that parents, grandparents and things can teach our children and do better than the government.
Okay, thank you. So you want the board to speak louder and more clearly?
Well, you have the mask on and facing that way, you can't hear nothing hardly. I heard him and I heard the thing there. Can't hear you at all.
Okay, I'll do a better job.
Thank you.
Next is Teresa Kennedy. Perfect, thank you. Right here, right here, right here.
I've seen some people stand over here like that.
I know, well, I had some complaints that people can't be seen or heard online, so I'm trying to encourage
And that
people to
was
be
the-
seen and heard.
I believe it was the principal for the elementary school that's standing over here. But anyway, I'm
Okay.
Teresa Kennedy from Mineral Point, 53565. First of all, I want to thank you, board, for having us as people of the Southwest Wisconsin that from Mineral Point that we have freedom to speak. I appreciate that, so thank you. Second of all, congratulations to the cross-country boys and girls. They did a good job. And I wanted to share that the amplification was great. The speakers were facing us this direction. And the Miss Sorella, when she was sharing, it's hard to hear you with mask on. Your voice aims that direction. But if you aim your voice this direction, we can hear you better. It's just a fact. And this is the loudest I ever heard you speak, Mr. Bear, and so appreciate that. You were loud and clear tonight. So if to improve these meetings, to hear you, why come if we can't hear you? We're part of it. We pay our taxes too. The next thing is I want to share is when I appreciate if we could have where when someone's talking and speaking up here, that we can have a back and forth conversation, because it gets lost when someone says something and then all of a sudden one of you guys bring it up and I was ready to bring it up. It's like, no, that's not what we said. They misunderstood something. And it was about virtual learning. And it was about if a child is not part of the school, could they still use Zoom? Yes, they have to pay for it. But if a child does come to the school, but they had to stay home, could they still use Zoom? And I thought I heard one of the board members say they have to pay. And I thought that didn't sound right. When they're part of the school, but they just had to stay home because of the COVID, that they still had to pay for Zoom. This big amount, and I just didn't understand. So that's why I thought it'd be good to have where we can have a conversation back and forth. And, or even calling us, somebody that mentioned it, could you please repeat it? And then we could get it straight. So it's not a misunderstanding. And let's see, I think that's all I have to say, and thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. The
Do you want to speak to that question about paying for Zoom?
the school would purchase a license for Zoom. The students, there's no money out of the pocket for the student. None of the people are buying a Zoom license that are attending tonight's board meeting. So the school would buy that license that would allow the teacher to have a class of a certain length. So, yeah, that, to think that the kids are being charged for Zoom was not right.
Thank
Okay. Next is Alex Carey, protocol changes. And again, please state your name and residence, please, if you have to say that.
Alex Carey, Mineral Point. I'd like to start with a reminder that anyone wishing to call out a member of the board, a staff member, or anyone specifically by name does so gently with consideration of that person's unique perspective. No one deserves to be verbally and publicly attacked, especially if you have not given that person a chance to speak for themselves. Before you mention an individual by name in this public forum, consider please speaking with that person directly first to ensure that this truth is not construed. There are many conversations being had, specifically online, that are distorting the truth drastically. Names are being mentioned and lies are being told, and words hurt for a very long time. The pediatric vaccine is being offered to our students on Friday. This is what a lot of us have been waiting for. Before changes to our safety protocols are made, note that this is the first dose of 2. A child is not considered fully vaccinated until weeks after the second dose. For the students vaccinated on Friday, 2 weeks after the second dose is December 17th. Because you cannot receive this vaccine if you are positive for COVID, nor if you are considered a close contact, it is unclear to when all students that wish to be vaccinated will be at this point. They deserve the time that they need. Please, tonight, do not make any changes that may compromise the protocols that were put in place to protect everyone. I ask that you leave the protocols in place until after Christmas break, giving everyone their fair chance to become fully vaccinated. At this point, I support the discussion for changes. If we are to return to in-school quarantines for close contacts, I ask tonight that you consider the addition of a full-time support staff for Nurse Lindsay. She has been putting in late nights, extremely early mornings, and weekends to try and keep our kids in school as much as possible. She has been beaten with unkind words, lost valuable time with her family, stretched her physical and emotional health beyond capacity because she is working harder than anyone could have ever asked for our community, But it is no longer sustainable. Stop letting the community decide what she can and cannot do. Speak with her, ask her, walk a day in her shoes. It is far too much for one person and it cannot continue in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Brooke Egan.
Hi, Brooke Egan, Mineral Point. First, I just wanna say, Andy, I just want to pass it around. It's regarding our email. We were talking earlier about the different schools. Well, not myself, but a lot of us gathered information like matrices from different schools around the area. And I'm not gonna go through all of them because it'll take a while, but Andy will pass them around. Basically, it's just like, the testing and like the matrix that they follow and like masking, quarantine, all that stuff. So I got one from Belmont, Iowa Grant, let's see, there's River Ridge, Belleville, Cuba City, and Shullsburg. I got Belleville, so my cousin, her boys go to Belleville, and I kind of wanted like a Dane County stance on things. And they do not require daily testing at all for vaccinated or unvaccinated. They don't have anything about vaccinated and unvaccinated students in it at all. So everyone's treated the same along with these other schools. That's the way it should be. It doesn't matter about your vaccination status. It shouldn't. I mean, it's all a choice and no one should be discriminated against. That's just how it goes. I mean, you guys talk about discrimination. There should be no discrimination whatsoever. So that's my biggest problem with all of this. The testing, excessive testing, it needs to stop. It really does. It's very frustrating. My kids have already been out, my two little ones twice already. Like, they just want to be in school. They're in kindergarten, second grade. My oldest, she's been out twice. Basketball started today, and it's like, a lot of these schools, like, they can still continue to play sports. Just wear your mask. Like, some of them are 14 days. Wear your mask for 14 days. If you're in close contact, I can deal with that. But the testing, keeping these kids out of school because they have the choice that they don't want to test. And I have that choice as well. And they should not be punished for that whatsoever. So that's just my thing to you guys tonight. Just please get rid of the testing, the daily testing. And then I also want to read something too. I found this out today. So since the beginning of the school year, Mineral Point schools have administered 1,278 COVID tests, which, let's see, 1,067 rapid tests and 211 PCR tests. Whereas the county has recorded 1,887 tests from August 28th to November 5th. So it's pretty crazy that Mineral Point schools, which is approximately 4% of Iowa County population, is running 67% as many tests as the entire county. Pretty interesting. So just my thing to you, just with the daily testing, and I think everything, I would feel great, and I think a lot of people would. We're just kind of sick of it all, so.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, that's all I have. You got any new?
Dr. Dunn, this is Alan Trank. I didn't get signed up, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, come on
Am I
up.
allowed to speak?
Yeah, come on up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right here.
That's
Here.
perfect.
So Alan Schrank, 325 Doty Street, City of Mineral Point. First thing I have to say is that this is my statement as a citizen, as a member of the school district, and also a parent. It doesn't reflect any of my beliefs of my employers that are current or my volunteer organizations that I'm part of. The first thing I wanted to talk about was some observations I've observed when I've been picking up my daughter, Serenity, who's 5 years old, that attends kindergarten at the Mineral Point Elementary School. The remodel was great, but the engineer that did the parking lot construction and design, clearly they didn't make it out of their office into the parking lot to see how it works, because it's not working. It's not safe when you pull in. There's a huge, half-shaped U when you pull in. And if you actually watch, larger vehicles can't even pull in. They go right over the curb because of the U is actually brought up so much. So my recommendation would be for that lower parking lot is to take out some of that curb so larger vehicles, there's the island too. The island is fine. It separates traffic, but to let those larger vehicles pull in is to take out some of that curb. So when larger vehicles are pulling in to pick up their parents, they don't have to go up over the curb.
On the north side or south side, Alan?
On the north side.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch of land there. The other thing is that when the grass has been being mowed, whoever's mowing the grass is blowing it all out into the parking lot. So when you're pulling in or picking up your kids, all this grass is flying around. And I know the grass has been, it's seeded and it's long, but if they bagged it or if they didn't blow out into the parking lot, it wouldn't be as big a mess for everyone's vehicle. I recommend when you, the lower parking lot on Cawthorn Street, I'd like to see a right turn sign when you pull out of the parking lot, so it's right turn only. That would alleviate the traffic going left up Cawthorn Street to the north. That would push everybody down Cawthorn Street to 5th Street, and then you could take a left turn to go down 5th Street or up 5th Street. So install a right turn sign there. The east side of Cawthorn Street, there's been temporary 20-minute parking put in effect. There's 2 signs there. Currently, it's between Tower Street and Front Street on the north side, or actually on the east side. The signs clearly say 20-minute parking, 8:15 a.m. to 2:45 p.m. while school's in session. I've observed multiple times there's school staff not following the rule, the 20-minute rule. They're parked there all day long. If the signs are up, it should be enforced, and the school district members that are going to or from the school should be parking their respective areas. The other thing I recommend is that you install a crosswalk sign in the middle of Cawthorn Street at the stop sign when you're going, kind of extension, please.
Is everyone okay with extension? Okay. Need another minute or two?
Yeah, just a couple more
Okay,
minutes.
2 minutes, Angie, thanks.
Put in a, sorry.
Crosswalk.
Yeah, install a crosswalk sign, the high visibility orange sign. They're about 2 or 3 foot tall. They bolt into the asphalt, and that would be in the crosswalk, in the middle of the crosswalk at Cawthorn at Tower Street. So that's, it's marked. The other recommendation is on Front Street on the north side. There's no parking right now from 7:30 a.m. to 8:10 a.m. on school days. There's currently 2 signs marking between Cawthorn and South Iowa Street. I recommend making that between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. In addition, there's no parking there. I know you're supposed to come down 5th Street to Cawthorn Street to the parking lot to get into the parking lot, but there's also parents that come over there, and you can't hardly get in the morning. It's fine because it's from 7:30 to 8:30 or 8:10 a.m. But in the afternoons, people are parking on both sides, and it's hard to get through there. And if we emergency vehicle needed to get through there, you couldn't get through there either, especially making that turn off of South Iowa Street. In addition, there's down on South Iowa Street on the east side, there's no parking from 7:30 a.m. to 8:10 a.m. on school days. There's 2 signs currently marking that. And those are on the east side between Front Street and Maiden Street. I would make that also 3 to 4 p.m. because it's so congested going through there. Then traffic would be able to go through there. So that's all I have.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Anyone online? You can use your raise hand icon.
Christy Cole is first up.
Okay. Christy Cole, just say your name and residence, please. You got 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Christy Cole. I live at 3095 State Road 39 outside of Mineral Point. And I would just like to express my thanks to the board and the administration and the staff and teachers of the school. I think you all have been doing an amazing job under a tremendous amount of stress. I think you've been really dealing with the complexities of this issue very well, and I very much appreciate that. I hope that tonight, as the board considers what to do as we move forward with the COVID protocols, I hope that you will respect the staff and the people in areas of expertise in your school to make the right decision for everyone in the community. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christy. All right, there's one named
Carly.
Carly, could you state your full name and residence, please?
Hi, I'm Carly Thornton. I'm in 716 Fair Street in Mineral Point. Sorry. I just wanted to go kind of along with Alex with her, extending the mask mandates and matrix until the end or after Christmas. I work in a pharmacy, and we were told today that it's been super short with being able to get the vaccines. So I completely agree that everything needs to be carried over until at least after Christmas or even January, because it's going to be harder than what we think to get everyone vaccinated. And I know they're going to be available Friday, but just for people who are in close contacts aren't going to be there this week, that they have those opportunities also. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thanks, Carly.
Thank you.
Will Harris.
Okay. Next, Will Harris.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. I just wanted to first comment on what Alan brought up in the parking lot. I don't know about the grass blowing onto the parking lot, but I pretty much agree with everything else and have had the same experience. And I've gone up over that curb a couple times myself. So it could probably use some re-engineering. You know, in terms of the matrix and everything, I think it's important for us to remember as a community that in March of 2020, none of us in the world really knew what this all meant. And I think it's easy to go back in hindsight and say, well, we should have been in school this whole time. And well, you know, kids don't get sick from this or whatever. But, you know, we didn't know. And I do appreciate that the kids are in school, including my kindergartner, who's in Alan's daughter's class. And it's great to be able to be in school. And I feel like my kid is safe because everybody's got a mask on and because there's this testing and when they're finding cases, they find out right away and they can deal with it. I'd like to echo, you know, that I think that the kids do need to be in school. And I was disappointed this week to find out that, you know, kids were going to have to quarantine outside of school. And the obvious solution to that is the one that Alex Carey raised, which is to allocate more resources for testing. So, you know, that you can test and you can be in school. And I've been with my kid and I've made him get a test 4 times this semester. And it is not a big deal. It's a little tickle in the nose. It's super fast and it's over. It's not a invasion of privacy. You might as well be blowing your nose in a Kleenex. It's not a big deal. You know, and you know, in terms of like losing this day this week at the elementary school, we're probably going to have 5 or 6 snow days this year. Hopefully the wrestling team does well and the basketball teams do well and the kids get out to go see the teams at the state tournaments. Kids miss school all the time for one reason or another. And if you miss one day and you got to take off work to be around your kids, I really don't think that's a big deal. You know, it happens all the time throughout the year. You know, I think you do have some work in front of you with this vaccinated and unvaccinated differences. And I also agree with the person that said it doesn't make much sense to have different rules for if the brother's got to stay at home and the sister doesn't. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it never did to me. Lastly, you know, I'm really disappointed to hear Bob's story. Bob's got a senior in high school, and I imagine that felt pretty rough for his daughter right before graduation to have a bunch of masks dumped in her yard and in her house toilet papered. And I think, you know what, we've got to come together, folks, as a community.
Thanks, Will. Time's up.
Great. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Anybody else on the online? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Let's move to the items for information and discussion. Mitch, I'd like to suggest that we move the COVID update to the end of information items, and that'll dovetail right into the action items where we review the COVID mitigation plan. Does that require a motion and vote from the board? I think. What's that?
That's where it was originally.
Oh.
I think you could just temporarily table that until that point in time. And come back to that agenda.
Okay, I mean, you want to make a motion to move it to that point in the agenda?
I'll second. Move to
Okay.
the end items and information.
It can be voice vote.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Okay. We'll go to the school-based mental health grant.
The presentation that you sent, I can pull that up.
That'd be great. So for those of you who are online or here in person, I'm Angie Klein. I'm the Director of Special Education and Pupil Services. And these are 2 members of our pupil service team. Danny Robb is our school social worker working here out of the middle school and high school. Erica Brunson is our new, our high school, middle school counselor. And so we wanted to come and share, in middle of August, I think it was, that Mitch and I got notified that we received this school-based mental health grant that we wrote for last spring. Danny is largely overtaking and undertaking the task of this, but we wanted to update the board and the community about this grant, and then answer any potential questions. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
All right, so like she said, I'm Danny Robb, I'm the school social worker, so board members, I appreciate you all in support of this position. I think this has been very much needed, and it's been a wonderful experience so far being in the district. So one of the things about the grant, it's a 2-year grant that was awarded to us from the Department of Public Instruction, which is up to $74,310 per year for the next 2 years. It was actually written in the spring by Angie, and we'll kind of go through like kind of all the things in the grant, but most of the grant was used to offset the cost to have me here in the district, and then also for some universal screening for mental health for our young people.
Which, and I can speak to that a little bit too. That offsetting the cost, that's a really common thing. You have to write in the grant that you have to be either contracting for school-based mental health services, but since that was already in place here with CWM counseling, then they could use that for an additional person. So it's not like a part of that grant is that you have to bring on like another person for that. Yeah. And so I can start here with this like student outcome priority statement. So there's 2 big statements, and then there's 2 action items from those statements, or excuse me, action items for each of those statements. So the first one talks about this priority statement number 1 was based on the 2018-19, so this is quite a few years ago, youth risk behavior survey data. So that group right now are current juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. But at the time they were middle schoolers, and so 8, 7, 6. And 51% of them answered yes to experiencing either anxiety, depression, or mental health. And then 10% of middle school students indicated that they did not have a teacher that they could confide in or a person they could go to talk about a problem. And so again, those kids right now are juniors, sophomores, freshmen, but would have been in middle school at the time. And obviously at the time, youth risk behavior survey is a really large survey done at the state level, and the whole comprehensive survey is only done, I believe, every 3 years. So this would be, we're actually going to be doing it again this year, but this data is kind of why we do that, so we can write for larger grants later on. Yeah. So from that priority statement, or Angie actually came up with a couple of goals for us to work on through this grant. So the first one is within the next 2 years, we want to decrease the number of students in middle school who report experiencing symptoms of either anxiety, depression, or self-harm from 51% to 35%. And then also to decrease the number of students who report that they do not have a teacher that they can confide in or a person that they can go to in order to talk to a problem from 10% to 5%. And that would be measured by our YRBS survey. So onto our action step item. So that ties really nicely into the first step or the first thing on our action step item, which is to do relationship mapping with that in our middle school. So what that means is that we know that when a young person has somebody in their school that they can go to, they can confide in and they can trust, that their outcome will be better. So we wanted to make sure that all of our students, all of our staff felt like they had somebody within the school. So we did a process where we had all the students' names, and we asked teachers, we talked about what relationship is when you have a relationship with that person, and then asked them to identify which students. And then from there, we did kind of looked at who maybe did not have somebody, and then we're going to be doing some kind of targeted stuff with those students to ensure that they do have somebody in the school that they can provide and talk to. So we'll wrap up to the other action step items. So then also within our advisory, we want to add in some more community building activities that we can do. So that is something that's going to be ongoing throughout the year. Also, we had a Families and Schools Together program that was done at the elementary school. So that is part of the grant as well. And it sounds like it was a pretty successful thing.
And then also creating a social emotional learning committee at the middle school. So that's going to start later this month. We have some staff that are interested in that. So we're going to be looking at a variety of things, such as just how to bring social emotional learning throughout the building. You know, so how do we make that just a normal part of our school, just like we do with reading and math. All right.
And the bulk of this grant is, and if you missed that at the beginning, it is targeted to the middle school. So although there are some things happening for the high school as well, this grant specifically and the activities within that are targeting the middle school students. So our next statement then, based again off of that youth risk behavior survey, was that 34% of the middle school students at the time identified that they rarely or never get help when they need it. And so from that then, the goal statement going forward for this grant is that by June 30th, 2023, because we're in a 2-year grant, is to decrease the number of students in middle school who identify that they rarely or never get help when they need it from 34% to 20%. And again, that would be measured by that youth risk behavior survey again. So we're having that sort of validity in what we're testing and what we're retesting.
All right, so action steps to support that particular goal. So the first one was just hiring myself, so hiring a school social worker to have an additional person for students to go to. And we're hoping that that will have an impact on our students and our data. The second thing was administering the BESS, and so that's the behavior and emotional screener for students in 6th grade. And so what the BESS is, it's a real quick 28 question, takes probably less than 10 minutes to do. To be given to all 6th graders. And it just asks questions about just kind of how they're feeling, what kind of things, you know, do they feel like they have a hard time focusing, concentrating, just a variety of those types of questions. And it gives you really just a quick snapshot on how that child is doing. So that screener has been completed in 6th grade. And at this point now, we're just following up with any student that maybe scored in the elevated or extremely elevated risk, and then we'll follow up with parents after that as well. So that is in the process. And then we'll be doing the YRBS survey again this year for 7th and 8th grade and get some more updated data that you know, it's a couple of years old now. So another action step item that we actually have completed already this year too is completing a procedure or process for teachers to refer students if they're concerned to our student support team. So we want to make sure that students are getting help and support when teachers are noticing that right away. And then the final one is kind of more about like, I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but just trying to figure out the schedule within our school day that allows for those tiered interventions for students that need additional support. So maybe in small groups or more individual work. And with that, any questions? That was a lot of information, yeah.
So are those 51 and 34% figures just for our district?
Yes. It is our district. And that was from, a couple years ago,
So the 2018-19 was the last time we participated in the youth behavior risk survey, and that was specific to our students at the middle school level. So we were using data specific to our schools.
There's a good part of that survey, because I've helped administer it before. It's anonymous. So you get students that will give you a truthful answer because their name is not attached to it.
Yeah.
The downside of it, or what will make more work for these ladies, is it's anonymous.
Right.
So I don't know that this person, this individual, Mitch Wainwright, is feeling depressed, is feeling something. So the programs that they lay out will impact all the students and give every student kind of those tools in the toolbox. So it helps foster a greater stretch of what's being taught and what's being shared.
Would you open up that SEL committee to middle schoolers?
We're definitely open to it. Yeah. So it's something that we just ask staff, are you interested? And in past, like when I've been at different committees, we'll look at maybe having students and even community members as well. So, so right now we're just trying to get it established and then trying to figure out a direction for that, but definitely.
I think it's worthwhile. Those numbers shocked me.
Yeah.
So thinking about those numbers though, that they were, the environment has changed significantly since then. So I don't know that, do you still feel that that's an appropriate baseline to measure progress from? Because in reality, what was 50% 3 years ago could very well be 75% today. So if you move the bar to 40%, it might not look like big progress, but in reality, we may have way more children experiencing depression and anxiety and some of these other challenges because their worlds have been turned upside down.
And I think that's why we included the screener tool that we did. So the sixth grade, we did use the best, but we wanted to make sure we weren't biting off too much. So the seventh and eighth graders will be screened with a tool that we create based off something from the best as well. But I think that, that's the part of that is we need to collect more data. And like these ladies said, they're doing the follow-ups now. So our team has met and looked at the initial student responses. And then based upon that, we developed some next steps to follow up with students. And then we'll be able to follow up with parents and make referrals out as necessary. So yeah, they might not be accurate, but I think we are trying to collect in time data as well that we can work off of.
And too, some of the good things about like having that, I mean, we could certainly assume that those numbers would probably be increased, over the last couple of years, but also too, I think just the more organic thing that happens is just by starting to talk about social emotional learning and mental health and being really intentional about speaking about those things. We start to normalize that amongst, the students, the staff, the parents, the community. And so I think you automatically are going to see some of those, that comfort, that level of being able to go and talk to somebody. Like, I really can do that, right? Or I know I've heard these people talk about it. My teacher kind of mentioned it. So you start to just naturally get students who are more willing to go and talk to somebody because people are talking to them about it. I think that will help too.
The hybrid test, is that one that you can, so we'll be able to use that?
Yeah.
Because we test at the end of this year, is that correct?
So the youth,
Or
from
the-
my understanding, the youth risk behavior survey is given every other year. And I think we had written that we would participate next year, but it's actually given in odd years. So it's given this fall, and then it won't be given again until the fall of 2023. So what we talked about was Erica knows we can have access to a lot of questions, so we'll be able to create our own survey based upon those same questions. But we wouldn't be able to participate in the national one
So we'll
next
use that as
fall.
our kind of scoring
Right,
indicator
right.
Yeah,
for the end of 2030.
Yeah.
On DPI, you can get all of the youth risk behavior survey questions.
You get Mineral Point student information, but
Yep.
you also get
State.
state information, so you can
And
see,
CISA.
so how are students, how are they feeling in certain areas compared to other students around? So, I mean, we can tailor programs to what's most important for our own students.
And I would agree with Erica, at least, I mean, I know some of our media support specialists are using youth risk behavior survey data. So any of the larger grants from DPI usually refer back to that set of data because it's something that all the schools have, so.
All right, thank you, ladies.
Yeah, nice job. Thank you. Next is the school board election timeline.
The board will be holding a special meeting next Monday to find a seventh board member. The deadline, if anyone is interested in that position, is noon tomorrow. You just simply need to email me a letter expressing your interest. And then the board next Monday at 6:30 will be meeting to, the board itself will elect that next member. For 3-year terms, if a board member is looking to not run, so a notice of non-candidacy must be filed no later than Monday, December 27th at 5 p.m. in the district office. The deadline has been extended this year, December 24th. It's normally on a Friday, December 24th. It's considered a holiday, so it's moved. December 27th is the date by 5 p.m. It can be earlier, but it should be no later than December 27th. For any candidate wishing to run again, any candidate, including an incumbent, sorry, let me clarify. So anybody wishing to run for the board, including incumbents, they need to file documents to establish eligibility for the spring ballot by Tuesday, January 4th at 5 p.m. So there's a form that you come in and fill out, needs to be notarized. Angie is a notary public. That information needs to be filled out no later than January 4th at 5 p.m. in the district office. That's the election timeline coming up here.
Any questions about that? Okay,
Mitch, how many people have signed up? So
I have 3 people interested in filling the vacancy as it sits right now. Share that afternoon tomorrow. If there's any other, well, then I'll share a list of names and things with the school board at that time.
registration for state education convention.
The registration window is open.
There's a link on board book there, Mitch.
I don't have that in here. Online, I don't have any link in registration for state ed convention.
Well, you all would have received an email. So the registration, and I will take care of getting you what we, we've got the hotel rooms reserved, so I will take care of the registration by the early bird deadline. So,
What's the early bird deadline?
I believe it's the 10th of December.
10th of December, okay.
So if you've already reserved a hotel room, if somebody's already said, please reserve me a hotel room, you'll take care of that, or do I need to contact you
That's done.
separately?
That's already done.
Okay.
The room's already done, yes.
So do I, as a board member who's attending, need to register, or will you be registering on my behalf?
I am registering on your behalf.
Okay, thank you.
And the convention again is the 19th, 20th, and 21st of January. Check in on Tuesday night, and then it starts Wednesday morning, the 19th.
Okay. Budget comparison.
You have in board book, again, the comparisons between October of 2020. In October of 2020, we had expended 27.67% of the budget. And in October of 21, we have expended 27.46% of the budget. So again, every time we do this, the percentage is very close. So it just shows that it's a pretty steady tracking of finances for the district, very consistent.
No large surprise expenses.
Other than one I'm asking you to approve tonight.
Right,
We had a water softener die on us in our building. But otherwise, no.
Didn't you make a note of that like last month or something?
I sent out an email saying that would be in this month's, you'd be approving that in this month's bills payable. But yeah, that we knew that was hitting it, something we needed to take care of.
Okay, any questions about the budget? Okay, let's go ahead and move to the COVID mitigation plan, and we'll start with just an update from you, Mitch, on just how things are going, and there have been some decisions made the last few days. You just want to update everyone?
Sure.
Where we are at this point?
Well, last week was a pretty rough week, as was mentioned earlier in the citizen comment. We could probably put most hospitals and healthcare providers, sorry, Dr. Dunn, to shame with the number of tests that we have done. We currently have 11 positive cases. Well, the number is up a little bit now with the most recent email last night, but 11 positive cases and 122 close contacts. That represents 33% of the elementary students and staff. And at the middle school, high school, there's 5 positive and 84 close contacts. That's 19% of the middle and high school students and staff. The website that we use has been challenging to say the least. probably in the last 3 to 4 weeks over trying to pull the data. You know, you had said you wanted to use the 535 zip code, 65 zip code. It was every day spitting out information at 2 o'clock update. Then all of a sudden it was not accurate. It was giving us information that was 2 days old. So we were able to find a spreadsheet that listed the daily positive cases for the 53565 zip code. So we were able to at least continue to give an accurate reading. Our numbers went up and kind of mirrored what the counties have gone up. We get an update from Debbie Sigenthaler at Iowa County and the number of cases countywide. We were coming down 60, 50, 40s, and then all of a sudden it bounced back up again. And the numbers within the 53565 zip code kind of did the same thing. 1 week we were below 10. We needed to be below 10 again that second week, and we would have taken a step back on the protocols on the masking and so on and so forth. And then it jumped up to 23, I believe the number was for that next week. So again, with hope that the numbers were going in the right direction. Last week, Monday, we had on the 1st, we had an admin meeting. The number of cases, especially in the elementary school where there is no possibility for the vaccine. We looked at the protocols. In the protocols, it talks about being able to quarantine in school as long as testing capacity allows. And we had reached a point where testing just isn't going well for us. We weren't sure how many cases we had, how many close contacts we had. And there was concern about the size of the population that would have been considered a close contact. So we needed to shut the elementary school down on Tuesday to allow for that contact tracing. That is bullet point number 2 in the protocol for a day. We were able to do that. Even though we were closed for the day, we still provided some testing. We had some staff members tested. We had some families call up and wanted to drive up and be tested. So Nurse Lindsay actually went outside of the school building to conduct some of those tests that day as well. We have had a positive test or positive case every day since Tuesday. So it's here, and the testing is allowing us to find out where it is and try to help mitigate any of the extra spread that might come along with it. So that's kind of the update from last week. We have been doing a large number of tests in comparison to other school districts, surrounding school districts. One of the things in the protocol was in order to keep students in school, if a test was completed and the student was negative, whether they were vaccinated, unvaccinated, they were able to stay in school. Most of the other school districts around, if the student is unvaccinated, they do not test in school. They refer those students out to an agency to conduct the test. And those students are out for 7 days if they're willing to test, and they can come back on day 8. Or if they do not want to test, then they're coming back day 10. One school is day 11. They're making them stay out for 10 full days and coming back on day 11. I reached out to Belmont. Belmont said they're not testing. It is an at-home quarantine for unvaccinated students. Southwestern is the same. Cuba City is the same. Dodgeville is the same. They're not testing. They're referring. those students out to other locations to conduct those tests.
The schools that are not doing testing, are they contact tracing to the level that we are? Or are they being less, less strict in how they define a close contact?
Most of the schools that I reached out to shared that, especially at the elementary age level, if there is a positive in the room, then the entire classroom is going home as a close contact and quarantine.
So you're saying the majority of the surrounding districts you checked with that are not doing testing, they're not allowing an in-school quarantine? The students are having to quarantine at home?
Correct. Iowa Grant is the lone ranger there in that one, so to speak. I spoke to their superintendent today. They had a change at the board level, and they are not home quarantining anyone.
I can't understand how Iowa Grant, Highland, Belmont, St. Joe's are unmasked and have almost 0 cases. But you're telling me they're quarantining entire classrooms out of school, but yet it doesn't reflect that. I'm really having a hard time. Something's not adding up.
I had an email from Bo Books, Belmont superintendent, and asked that what their protocol was, and that's what he shared with me.
I thought if the kids were masked and they're at least 3 feet, they were not a close contact.
That's what it says right here. It says that right here in our matrix.
Yeah.
Both masked and 3 feet apart, not a close, it's even in bold print, not a close contact and no quarantine. So where did we go from, how do we get to this many kids out of school when everybody's masked?
Well, I believe that, that the model that they're using to teach and for students to learn is more interactive than basically sitting in a desk maintaining 3+ feet of social distance. There are opportunities when students are not masked, lunch, sitting at lunch tables. So throughout the course of a day, especially at the elementary school, when students are in a much more self-contained environment, they're together and are pushing that time period, pushing that distancing. And that's what brought us to this point.
If we were to stay the course, right, just doing what we're doing today, how soon do you anticipate us being able to return to in-school quarantine protocols? And I realize I'm asking you to use your crystal ball here, but I'm just looking for, like, is this till Thanksgiving? Is this till Christmas? Is this, like, let's get through, if we get through the next 2 weeks, we think we'll, any guesses?
I would love to say, these 10 days, it's kind of that max. So I'd love to say within 10 days, if the spread and the numbers can come down, then we would be probably back to a much more manageable environment. We think that if there's a positive in one classroom and it was only one classroom, no problem. We could easily test those students. In-school quarantining could happen, for the close contacts. If it moved to a second classroom, same thing. A second classroom, most likely, so now you're talking about 40 tests in a given day. That's with no other positives, no other symptomatic students being tested.
How, I'm solution generating here, so if I'm jumping the gun, I apologize to the rest of the board, but can we talk about if we have classrooms that we treat as cohorts and we switch to every other day testing, that would double our testing capacity, and is that something we can consider? It lessens the level of protection we have. It doesn't move away from testing completely. It would get kids back in school sooner. And I guess where I'm coming from is we started the year saying we wanted to keep kids healthy and we wanted to keep kids in school. And so right now with, right now it doesn't feel like we're doing both, or we're doing either very well, and that feels wrong. And then it's our youngest learners, our elementary students, who need that in-person education the most, and those are the ones being most impacted. So this feels not good. Again, this feels wrong. And then we have stories about kids being tested every day for weeks on end. That doesn't feel good. But we just heard about the number of cases that we've had in the schools that are positive. So making any major changes to reduce the likelihood that we're catching those cases feels wrong. So let's talk, like, what can we come up with?
I would suggest you're in the action item component now, because
sorry,
this is
apologize.
you're perfectly fine, but that's what you're doing. You're starting to try to talk about this, so.
Well, okay, why don't we go ahead and go to the action item and then we can just keep talking?
Yep.
That's fine.
I guess could one option be we eliminate testing for kids with no symptoms?
I said that last meeting. This is ridiculous to test kids that are healthy. And now we're even keeping kids home from in-person learning who are symptom-free. And we go, last year, we were the district with the most days without in-person education, and we're on track to do it again right now.
So what if we,
Hold on.
oh, sorry, I apologize.
And when I took an oath, and when we had that candidate forum, I said I was here, my main focus is education. What we ain't doing. Keeping kids home is not education. We were told these masks would keep kids in school. Now, I'm not here to say we're taking the masks off. That's not at all what I'm doing. Let's call a spade a spade. These masks ain't doing nothing. Right? We can even go further. I'll go further into depth as to proof as to why they're not. We had that homecoming dance, which everybody attended. We were told the mask came up. The kids had a blast. Quite frankly, I'm glad they did it. Not one single positive case came from that, or we would have heard about it. We would have heard why it happened. But yet we got kids 3 feet apart in the classroom, both with masks on, but yet now they can't go to school to learn because somebody possibly 3 feet away from them tested positive. Nothing is making sense here, but yet we're keeping healthy kids at home because we can't test them.
Thank you.
You're taking people's taxpayer dollars and telling kids that are absolutely healthy, symptom-free, you can't go to school. How can we justify that?
It's not an answer to your question, Gary, and I understand your question. I can say that we have had positive cases come out of being close contacts here at school as well. You know, is it a huge number? I don't have the specifics on it, but we are developing a positive from a close contact within the school, within a classroom. And it's not an easy
I'm all for
decision.
keeping the masks on because there's people out there that want them and I respect that wish. But this testing's got to stop.
Well, so if the masks are gonna say that testing is gonna be reduced, does masking need to become more stringent? And I'll admit, my kids were at the gym all day on Saturday between basketball and volleyball, and we weren't wearing masks. So I'm telling it like it is, but so if you take away that layer of protection that comes from the testing, are we going to step up our mask game? And there's been at least some references to Dane County schools and how they're doing it. And they make sense, but in Dane County, you can't be in an indoor space unless it's a private home with somebody you're not related to without a mask on. You can't run into Quick Trip without your mask, which I do. I shouldn't, but I do. You know, you don't sit at a gym. You don't go to basketball practice without your mask. So if that's another thing to consider, if we're going to move away from some of the testing, are we willing as a school and as a community to up our masking? I don't know that we are. I don't know that I am.
What would you change at the school?
I think that if we're going to step away from reduce our testing load, we probably have to consider that masks are required anytime you are in a school building. I am not proposing that, but that's what goes through my mind. That's a potential trade-off. So all those before and after school activities, those Saturday basketball tournaments and practices. Again, I'm not proposing it. I'm putting it out there as a point for discussion. I'd love to hear what the rest of you think.
Well, I mean, you know, we had the same approach to close contacts all last year, which was if you're a close contact, you are home, right? And no one liked that, right?
That's true.
You know, including my own kids, right? So the virus hasn't changed. The guidance hasn't changed. So why should we, I mean, so the quarantine rules haven't changed, you know, really. I think we're just tired of it, right? And the board is trying to say, instead of in-home quarantine, if you can prove that you are coming to school negative, you can be in school, you know? And so testing allows the kids to come in school, to come into school, which a lot of these surrounding districts aren't even offering to families. You know, you're a close contact, you're home for a week, right? You know, except for Iowa Grande, you know? So, you know, and I think, you know, how good is close contact tracing being done in other districts? You know, I don't know for sure, but I can tell you that, you know, we have a full-time staff working on it and is still having a hard time getting it done. You know, the county is unable to do it for us. And, you know, I think everyone's just short-staffed and say, you know, things get lost through the shuffle, you know, and then when testing becomes optional, testing doesn't happen. And then we don't know what cases are floating around. And then we don't know where someone who's in the hospital or dies from it, we don't know where they got it from, right? So, I mean, I'm with Gary. I mean, I hear all of these frustrations that we got to keep these kids in school. And there's no doubt we are having a bona fide outbreak in an elementary school. There's no doubt about it. And, you know, it's happening in the community. You know, it's intermixing. It's you know, it's coming from everywhere, you know, and when a positive case is in the school with other kids in the classroom, other kids are getting it, you know, and you know, I think everyone's trying to enforce distancing and masking as best possible, but you know,
I don't think we are.
Well,
I think that's part of the problem. I don't think we are.
I think that's a fair debate, you know, but you know, it's hard to, I think that part of the solution here is to reinforce, you know, the other precautions, to be extra stringent about it. And, you know, I think requiring, you know, masks in our facilities at all times is one way to be more stringent, you know, and to prevent extracurricular and after school, you know, passing of the cases. But you know, so if we get rid of testing, then we have two options. We either quarantine all close contacts at home, like other districts are doing, or we just let them all go to school and wait for them to have symptoms. And then once they do have symptoms, then we have to say, where have you been the last 3 days? Who have you been in contact with? And then it's all retrograde. You know, oh, they were with this group. Okay, they're close contacts. Oh, they were with this group. They're close contacts. Okay, they were with this group. And it's all a big mess, you know, so we risk that as well, you know, and then parents are saying, well, my kid's a close contact again. Well, you know, we risk that frustration too, of my kid's getting named again and again and again, if we're letting a bunch of close contacts just roam the halls, you know, waiting for symptoms to show up. So that's, I mean, I'm not advocating for one way or the other, but this is really hard in terms of problems, each solution brings its own issues,
So in an environment like the elementary where we are pretty well cohorted, right? Like these classrooms function as independent units or in minimal cross pollination, I guess. What is the risk of doing every other day testing? So now if somebody wasn't tested on Wednesday and they're positive on Thursday, for example, it does create one additional day of contact tracing.
That's the main risk.
Does that feel like a potential trade-off, and would that reduce the load enough that we could potentially get our elementary students back in school? And is that something that we even want to ask our administration to talk about, or is that just dead in the water and you guys aren't there? I'm curious.
I think anything's on the table.
I'm willing to talk about anything to keep kids in school and safe.
I mean, I think, I don't think I think the staff is doing a great job. I think the school nurse is doing a great job. I think the admin is doing a great job. I think we've done what we thought was best. But the fact is we're failing at this point. I mean, we're failing. I think back to winter of last year when we were finally letting our kids back in school, and the measures we went to make sure that we got to stay in school. Our desks, we tried to get 6 feet apart. I mean, we have 3 extra feet this year, and we're failing. I remember walking through the elementary school, and the rooms were so homey, but I remember seeing 4 triangle desks pushed together to make a square. I mean, there's no way those desks are 3 feet apart. And at the time, it wasn't a big deal to me, but now something's got to change. I mean, it's incomprehensible to me. We have five cases in middle high school. We have 85 close contacts while we are masked, which means anytime they're farther than 3 feet apart, they're not a close contact. Are we having group hugs at school?
Well, they're not. If they went to basketball practice though, and I'm just picking on basketball.
Why are we tracing outside of the school hours? Why is that our job? The county's not doing it for us. Why are we tracing every movement of these students? It's impossible.
Mitch, how are we currently contact tracing? Are we
I mean, it's impossible for the school nurse.
I had one.
I think we need to look at when we're tracing.
I would ask Jane.
It's an old saying, work smarter, not harder. We're spending way too much time in contact tracing. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it starts in the classroom. If we know that there's a positive in the classroom, then it's seating charts and measuring, the distances between who were you with. If you look at the lunchroom, students are together for 30 minutes at lunch, sitting at a lunch table. You're lucky if you get to be 6 feet away from somebody if you're all sitting around the same table.
But I know that. But listen, every neighboring school is doing the same thing at lunch, and they're not having problems.
Shouldn't that be, if we're doing this correctly, the only exposure risk? Figuring out who they sat by at lunch. I think when we talked about it all, but 2 grades are capable of spreading desks out 3 feet or wider. The 2 youngest grades then.
At the elementary school.
And I'm assuming everybody can here. 3 feet.
I don't know that everybody can. It'll depend on the class size. If somebody's got 20 students in a section, there's no way you can keep everybody three feet apart or better in a classroom when that's the case.
It just seems like, and I guess maybe this starts with my frustration that we're sitting here, and I'm not against it. We're sitting here asking to provide more assistance to the school nurse, and we're advocating for it at the the elementary school level. And we had to miss a day of school because we can't start by following the rules. We can't start by masking. When we hear that a notorious mask issue is occurring and causing these issues, well, let's clean that up. This isn't the first time we've had this conversation where we have to be better at the rules. I mean, it's just baffling to me that we can't find a way to separate these kids by 3 feet, to cohort them at lunch, to minimize close contacts and to keep them in school. I mean, we have 33% of the district down there at the elementary school close contacts. And we have 3 extra feet this year because we're masking. I'm all for masking. It provides us 3 extra feet. I'd rather mandate it and take the 3 feet and make sure our kids stay in school. And then testing is a non-issue. Then we're testing 12 kids because we're doing it right. Then our nurse has time to do her job and test and contract trace, one positive for 12 kids because this class and that class were the only opportunity we had to even be exposed.
You want to get input from Mr. Renwick on those concerns?
I mean, I would love to hear why we're not exercising some of these things at this point.
Right.
Or why we can't.
So I think the main questions are mask enforcement and maintaining 3 feet and cohorting during lunch so that we can, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, so that we can reduce the amount of close contacts.
And we may have to adjust the way we do things for 4 or 5 weeks and commingle less and gather students together less. But it's just baffling that we're in a situation where we can't send kids to school because we can't test them.
Maybe give some examples of what we were doing last year.
Sure.
And what we're not doing this year.
So last year we had the 4 interns who were able to help supervise and help mitigate, I think, some of those issues with we can spread kids out more. So we're down those 4 individuals.
So we're up 3 feet.
Yeah, we have some additional.
3 additional feet.
We have some additional square footage, correct. For lunch, we cohort them now. We tried doing just kids 3 feet apart when they're eating and facing this way. That was very difficult. So we went to a kind of a pod where we'd have maybe 4 kids on average at one table. And there's usually only 1 grade level in the lunchroom at one time. That pod then exists within that classroom. So if you saw like a table or 4 triangle tables, in the classroom, those kids sit with each other at lunch too, to try to minimize the risk. I have not measured, I guess myself, the triangles, but I think they're around 3 feet. So there is some distance there, but I can verify that.
They might be,
I would say too, masks are going pretty well, I think. I haven't had to remind a lot of kids or adults to do it. I think it's better this year than last year, in fact. I would say something, and I'll rely on you on this, but the Delta variant is much more contagious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think masks are not as effective. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, but we're dealing with the Delta variant now, and I think that has something to do with it. And I would just say our kids are not vaccinated, and you want to minimize the secondary doing a little bit better with positives. Well, you have quite a few kids that are vaccinated. So, but we're always willing to look at it and do better and make changes. Anything?
Is there a way to operate where we don't have to just consider every classroom an entire close contact every time they go positive?
And Jane, correct me if I'm misspeaking or I leave anything out, but just doing the testing and doing everything that goes with it. It's not just taking the test, it's also recording it, and it's also just everything that's involved in that process is quite extensive. Just watching it, being a little bit involved. So that's time away that Jane cannot contact trace or you know, and so that proves to be a conflict.
So you're saying you're unable to do contact tracing, so the default is?
I think we
the
can
entire classroom?
contact tracing and, you
I
know,
defer to the teachers. The teachers tell me. I'm not in the
Oh,
classroom. They tell me who is a close contact because they're with them all day.
and that's a good point too, is, you know, I've been in every classroom subbing, and I mean, to keep first, second, even third graders more than 3 feet apart is just, it's really tough, you know, and then you can get them to sit 3 feet apart, and, but you're, you know, it just proved to be very difficult just in the little time I've been teaching when I've had to fill in, so. I have not seen a big difference between what we've done last year and this year, other than we're a little shorter staffed than we had last year. But like I said, we're open to trying to, you know, tweak things and try to mitigate even further, and staff are open to that. We want the same thing you do, is keep the kids here for sure, so.
I'd like to just say we're in like crisis mode because the cases are so high.
Right.
This can't go on forever. The vaccine is coming for those who want it. I am really hoping that this is not forever or even more than, I just hope it just goes down and down and down. And we can get back to where we were until we're ready to make bigger changes. It's just not possible. At this moment, we would have had to test over 120 kids just at the elementary today. It's just not possible right now.
How many were symptomatic?
I don't have a percentage. But a lot of times, you know, when kids are a close contact and they get tested, they're like, oh, yeah, I've been sniffling for 4 or 5 days, or yeah, I'm coughing, yeah, I've had headache. You know, a lot of times they don't hear about the symptoms until after they've tested positive.
Whether they're symptomatic or not, the test is only positive if the person has it. So I think it's a little silly to blame the tests for finding somebody that's asymptomatic, but then spreads it. They can still spread it to somebody. They can spread it to grandma. They can spread it to anybody.
It's a capacity issue. We don't.
Sure.
Testing
We're being
capacity.
told we can't test.
Right.
So why are we testing what we can't test? I mean, we don't have the bandwidth to test.
Well, we
That's the
had,
problem statement.
well, we have a capacity that we've exceeded, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we have to ask ourselves, you know, does testing provide value in terms of keeping these kids in school longer? And is there anything we can do to increase our capacity to test? And, you know, if we've reached our capacity, you know, what else can we do besides temporarily suspend it, you know, until the testing requirements come down to our capacity, you know, unless you're suggesting because we can't, because our capacity is so limited, why do it at all? Is that what you're getting at, or okay?
I'm just saying more for the kids who don't have symptoms, like why are we putting our effort in there? Like, why don't we focus on tracing the kids who are symptomatic? Making sure kids are at least 3 feet apart, like the protocol says. Focusing on those areas. I don't like masks, but I would compromise and keep masks in place if kids don't have to go home.
Right.
I think we have to ask ourselves too, why is it spreading so much in the community right now? So we can't, you know, I think my whole concept behind this was to keep the kids as safe as we can in school. We can't control what they're doing in the basketball court. We can't control what they're doing anywhere else in town. We can't control what they're doing here. And I didn't want the schools to be a super spreader event. And I think we've done a good job of that. I don't know how much is actually spreading in the school, but I do think it's spreading in town. It's spreading, you know, at all the extracurricular activities. Nobody likes wearing masks. Believe it or not, I don't like wearing masks. But especially now winter comes, it makes my glasses fall. But I think, we need to look and see what behaviors can change too. If the community really wants their kids in school, they need to take this a little more seriously as well. And people can do what they want, but these are logical outcomes of the behaviors of the people in the community.
I'll remind people, Dr. Lindsay made this statement more than once on this board, and everybody agreed. We have no control over what happens outside of these doors.
That's exactly what I said. But I'm not trying to control anybody.
You can't stand here and tell people what to do outside the doors.
You are exactly right, but I'm telling them, I'm not telling anybody anything. I'm just telling you that those behaviors do affect just how we keep our kids in school. I'm not telling them to change anything. I'm only saying it does affect what happens, to the kids.
To answer your question, Justin, I mean, obviously symptomatic kids are higher priority for testing. And it's my understanding that even though we're suspending testing for in-school quarantine, we are still testing symptomatic kids. So we are not eliminating all testing. We're just simply saying, if you're a close contact, there's too many of you. If you're close contact asymptomatic, there's too many of you to come in and be tested to come to school for now, right? And, we're averaging 75 tests a day just in elementary school, so, I think when we get closer to maybe half that, and, the preliminary admin discussions were maybe to just reevaluate that every Friday when we look at the matrix and just say, what's our testing capacity like? Can we resume testing, the following Monday at the elementary school and just make that decision on a weekly basis? But I think, another angle you're going with your question is, well, why don't we just use our testing for kids that become symptomatic and not test asymptomatic close contacts? And that does help that solves our testing capacity problem. But now we have close contacts, that are not being tested, and by CDC guidelines would be at home quarantine, right? So then the next question is, well, do we buck CDC guidelines and say, yes, you're a close contact and you should be quarantined at home and monitor for symptoms, but we're going to let you come to school with a mask on and trust that you will report symptoms when you start to have them. And, that carries its own risks, but I mean, that's certainly something, that can be proposed.
Or again, I go back to what if we consider testing our close contacts at the elementary level every other day? And while that comes with an enhanced risk, any symptomatic student would be tested every day. Jade would like to say something.
I guess the worry I would have for that is, let's say we're going every other day and we're on the last day and we didn't test yesterday. And now they're positive. And so now, instead of this being the last day of testing for this group, now they're gonna go every other day for another 7 days, and it just goes on and on. If we don't catch them before they get through the doors to join their class for 8 hours of the day, we've just started them all over again.
But had you tested that kid on day 6 and they were positive, they would have restarted their
Right.
I mean,
because it depends on the day of the week, and like if you get a Monday morning, that's a win, because we're not going to go back 2 days over the weekend as long as they have no symptoms. I guess I understand. I definitely understand, that suggestion. It's not any less to keep track of, I guess, in terms of, okay, this group was this date and they're coming every other day. Now, I don't know. It's still a lot right now in this crisis mode. It's just a lot to keep track of. And as far as only testing kids who are symptomatic, then you have to really, really screen those kids. You have to really take the time to screen those kids every day, because kids are coming to school with coughs every single day. Kids are coming to school with runny noses, headaches, snotty nose. I mean, every symptom has been sent to school every day. So just the screening of close contacts would be almost as time consuming as testing them. I'm not trying to like say that nothing can work. And I really think and hope this is just temporary. This isn't for the next month that we won't be able to test those contacts. It's just in the near future. We have too many on the docket right now.
So do you have any alternate suggestion, I'm sorry to put you on the side, any alternate suggestion other than us doing in at-home quarantine?
If you can limit the number of people or the number of classrooms that we're doing a day to keep some in school, but to do 6 classrooms every single day at the elementary levels, it's not possible. But we could reduce the number that we're allowing, and I know the methods could be like, who do you allow? Is it first come, first serve? And that brings up a whole new set of changes that can happen on a dime, but can we see how it goes over the next week or 2? I mean,
Another solution is just simply get more testing help. If we believe that testing has value in keeping kids in school while we're dealing with this outbreak, if you've got extra testing help, that would expand our testing capacity. We do have COVID-related funds to spend on COVID-related expenses, for the school year for temporary help. That's something else that could be considered.
It does. I do reflect back then on the parents' comment about my kid has been tested every day for the better part of a month.
I was reflecting on that too. Right.
I don't know.
Well, so different issue, but I was reflecting on that too. And so think about it. So if you have kids in the same classroom and one test positive and the classmate's a close contact, then, and they're all still in school with testing, and then another kid tests positive, then you're close contact again, right? And another kid tests positive, close contact again. So if you're having an obvious outbreak in the classroom, maybe instead of being a close contact for 3 weeks and getting a Q-tip up your nose for 3 weeks, if you quarantine the classroom for a week, then you allow all those cases to isolate and get out of their contagious period. And then you start back clean. And then your risk of becoming a close contact again is much lower than if you're continuing to surround yourself with other close contacts being positive case. So I weigh that too, right?
Yep.
So that's why other districts have shut a classroom down, for a week or 2 for that very reason. But every decision, then we've got kids home on virtual for a week, which we don't want either, right? So it's, like I said, every permutation has its risks and issues. But again, I just want to remind everybody, this pandemic is behaving like other pandemics have. We had a surge in November, December of last year, and now we're having a second surge of cases. This was expected. And we're having to deal with it, unfortunately, just like we dealt with it last time. Except we have more information, we have more kids vaccinated, more staff vaccinated. But we're not in hybrid mode, right? That was a stress on the parents, it was a stress on the students, it was a stress on the staff, right? We were basically shut down the whole second quarter last year, the entire district, right? And we have come a long way in terms of how much more time we have these kids in school. We don't have a hybrid plan. The chance of this district going entirely virtual is extremely low, right? And so I know that we're trying to implement a protocol and do the best we can to contain what is clearly an outbreak at the elementary school, and it's frustrating everybody. But just in perspective, we have come a long way in terms of achieving the goals that we've set for dealing with this pandemic, which is keeping the kids in school as long as possible and as safe as possible. So, to the speaker's point, I mean, kids are getting vaccinated on Friday. This surge of cases is going to start dying down soon. And
We heard that last month.
yeah, I know.
Actually, we were promised last month that it would go down.
Yeah,
And it
well,
has.
I didn't set a deadline, but it will go down,
So
right?
actually, I think it went down and then back up, right? Because we did have the matrix get below 10
Yeah,
for one,
yeah.
one glorious week. There was
Yeah.
hope.
There's a lot of excitement in
Hey,
school, I can tell you
There was
that.
at my
I'll
house too.
admit, this, hey, this is a living thing. It's not an exact science.
Right.
And there is no doubt that this surge we're having is not peaking up and down like it does like it's been doing in some other areas. We've kind of hit a high point and it's kind of, staying around that high point for several weeks. And I don't have a great explanation for that. But that's how sometimes, I mean, if you look at a graph of cases anywhere, it's not clean. But the chances of having 120 close contacts every day for the next 2 weeks is very low. But we're in a peaking point right now, and I think exercising patience is wise.
Mitch or Nurse Lindsay, maybe one of you would know, are there temporary agencies that deal with school and public health nurses? Is there someone we can call?
I'm not aware of anybody that provides a temporary service. We have reached out to some RNs who have graciously been here to help us out to the best of their ability, and we appreciate that. We can certainly continue to try to do that. But yeah, I don't know that, that there's
Agency.
Nurses R Us is
Right.
out there waiting for something like this to come along and, and volunteer their services or submit a contract for their services.
No, I hear people chuckling, but they do use that to staff hospitals regularly. They use it for lots of things. So,
My daughter's a traveling
Yeah.
nurse,
right,
but
it's a profession, but I don't know if they do it for
Does she
schools.
have a few weeks leave that she'd like
Right.
to come home?
she is coming home soon. I don't know if she would. She's done plenty of COVID testing in her career as a nurse as well.
I'm thinking of the letters we got specifically from the elementary staff and the one that was read here tonight, and basically, we're just supposed to be patient. And I'm not buying it at all.
So Gary, what do you propose?
I propose we get rid of testing completely and put masks on, we stay in school. But I know nobody's gonna go along with that, and that's fine with me. If you think your child is sick and you wanna have them tested, by all means, have them tested. But there's no way you can sit here and justify the numbers we've seen compared to other districts who don't even have masks on, but yet we're supposed to believe, we're told to trust that these masks will work. These are factual numbers in front of us. As Board Member Bush said, it's failed. And we're just supposed to sit here and tell people to be patient.
Less than a third of our cases are coming out of the daily testing of close contacts. So they aren't just coming up from asymptomatic people. Most of the cases that are coming from people who are keeping their kid home and testing them because of symptoms or because of a positive case at home. So these cases aren't just popping up because of the testing that's happening. It's just out there.
And if you're a close contact, you're in a mask, you shouldn't have to worry. If you want to test your kid, go test it. If your kid tests positive, do what you have to do. It's your child.
I guess why can't we stronger or better enforce the 3 feet so that the kids can stay in school?
We can,
I know.
we can reevaluate and just.
Well, I certainly don't want to imply that I meant only elementary. Our numbers per case are worse at the middle high school with older kids who are together far less time during the day. And we're averaging 17 staff or students quarantined per positive in this building.
Mostly
And
well vaccinated in this
I
building.
don't understand how that can even be. I mean, we should, in this building for the most part,
With the
have
number,
almost zero close contacts all the
Except for
time outside
Except for
of
the
lunch.
handful of kids you sit at the lunch table
Yeah.
with, right?
The number of positive cases in this building, with the number of vaccinated students, how are we supposed to believe it's gonna change anything down there? You have not sold me on that it's gonna change anything.
How do you know exactly how many kids are vaccinated?
I don't have a clue. I said the number that are here. I don't know what the number is. I never said I did.
Sorry.
Do we know the number?
We had an estimated number.
Obviously, the number of students vaccinated in this building is a higher percentage than the
Correct.
other simply because it's an option. And the number of positives is lower right now in this building. I believe there have been some breakthrough cases. I don't know how many. So that means someone who has been vaccinated has now tested positive.
20%. 20% of our positives are breakthroughs.
Okay.
In the school?
Yes.
Do we know?
Correct?
I didn't hear you.
20% of our positives have been breakthroughs.
At the middle high,
Yes.
3% at the elementary.
True, more than
6 total for the whole district. So that's much more positive for unvaccinated people. I think it will make a difference when more people are vaccinated.
because it helps stop spreads and having more
And they
people
won't have
vaccinated.
it if everybody's.
It's a big
They
if.
won't get it.
Are we, how
It's also
confident?
6 to 8 weeks away.
Right.
Andy, that you make a really good point though, that I just can't get past is how do we have 17 close contacts in this building when the only exposure should be the lunch period? And I would guess most kids sit in kind of the same group every day. So even if we have 2 or 3 days that we have to go back, isn't it probably the same?
For lunch,
Can
for the most
Can I
part it is.
just comment on
Yeah,
that?
please do.
Because I have helped Jane do 75% of the contact tracing up here. And it's not just lunch that is an issue up here for contacts. Every student has a different group of kids they sit by in a classroom. So it's not just these close contacts are not just coming out of the lunchroom. They're coming out of every class. Some teachers are better than others about spreading kids out and keeping them 3 feet apart. Some because they're able to because the classroom is smaller. Some because there's more students in the classroom. But I just want to make it clear, like these close contacts are just not coming out of the lunchroom. They are coming out of specific classes that these kids are in throughout the day. We go to every single classroom and measure, and each teacher has a seating chart. And it's very straightforward. The teachers have done a great job of having a seating chart. We really don't even have to disturb classes most of the time because we try and do it at break times.
And we're measuring the 3 feet because we're having faith in our students that they're masking the way
And
they
that
should be.
another question we ask the teachers too, every room we go to, is if that student is a good mask wearer, or if they have to remind the student frequently to pull the mask up appropriately. So that also does, play a factor in it as well, because there are some students that don't wear their masks well, more so in the middle high school than the elementary school.
There must be, because I spend about 90 minutes a week with about 30 kids, and I probably spend at least every 2 minutes having to remind people to fix their mask. So I know what happens. I can't even imagine what the instructional staff and the rest of the staff here goes through trying to encourage children to wear their mask properly. And I know we can't tell people what to do, but parents, again, if you want kids in school, remind your kids to wear their mask properly at school. I mean, these are, it's faulty, it's faulty logic in my mind to blame tests for finding positives when there could be other things. I think Andy's idea, Johnny's, these are great ideas. Just to make sure we have those 3 feet. You know, it never hurts to redouble your efforts to look at what you're doing. But I think blaming the test for finding things is kind of is not good.
Well, I mean, if anyone would like to propose a suggestion or make a motion, now's the time to do it. Otherwise, we'll move on.
We have yet to address the vaccinated, not vaccinated.
Okay.
And I think we need to.
Go ahead.
You know, as stated, 20% of our cases are breakthrough. I think the last time I checked, 40% of my county was breakthrough on their positives. So I guess I struggle with treating the students differently now that we're aware that breakthroughs are happening. And we could have a breakthrough and not know for 5 days. And I struggle as much with, you know, in grade 9 through 12, these students are competing academically for class rank, for a number of things academically. And I struggle with, based on vaccination status, one student may not have access to strong classroom experience for 5 days and be expected to take the same test, take the same quiz, because they chose not to get a shot. I struggle with that. And I don't know if the answer is to put everybody on the 5 day, to put everybody on the. I mean, the first answer I think is to figure out how many classrooms really don't have 3 feet. And make sure we're doing that. Make sure when we're in the smallest room in the building, that everybody's wearing a mask. Make sure that our staff is setting the example. But then once we do that, and hopefully we can lessen close contacts, I think we probably need to start treating them all the same, regardless of which way we go.
Can I make a correction to a percentage? So for the hold cases, it's only 10% are breakthrough. So in the high school only, it was the 20%.
Right, that's what I meant.
Okay. And none of them.
Because
none of them.
most elementary cases haven't had the opportunity to be breakthrough.
Correct.
So
but
that the
overall
20% number up
positives,
here.
There was only 10% of those were breakthrough, and nobody had their booster yet at the time. So that will also help.
Some of the breakthroughs might have been staff members.
And as a parent, I guess if I may just say one thing about the spacing in elementary, I'm not in the classroom, so I'm not able to say what it looks like. But I don't know that many people in the building or in the school district want their kindergartner, third grader, second grader at a desk saying, you have to stay 3 feet away from me. I can't touch you, I can't play with you, I can't read next to you. I don't know how good of an experience that would be in the classroom.
I don't dispute that. Would you rather have them home watching the screen for 7 days?
No, but I would keep them home for a week if it meant we could get caught up and slow this thing down so that they
That's
don't
what I
get
was
positive and have to stay home for 10 days.
Anybody have any thoughts on, I guess anybody in agreement that we need to start treating these
Yeah, I mean, I was
students
gonna
the same,
make a motion that they should be treated the same.
but we have to figure out which way.
So we can either treat close contacts with daily testing or return masked and tested on day 5. Day 5 or later.
So but that there, you're still sending kids home, correct?
No,
No, they return masked.
Return masks.
So
It's
it,
a test on day 5.
that's what a vaccinated close contact would do. Would be asked to do.
so we have a testing capacity issue at the elementary school that's preventing us from allowing in-school quarantine. If we start requiring kids who today are opting not to test until day 5 because they are vaccinated, if we start requiring daily tests of them, are we further stressing our testing capacity, and are we going to end up with more students out of school because we can no longer provide the testing at school?
Are you saying test every day or test on day 5?
Isn't that our
Yes,
option
so
right
those-
now?
Those are the choice of the options.
Those are the,
Or something in between, but, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, if we treat all close contacts like unvaccinated and require daily testing to be in school, that would stress our testing capacity.
And would it stress it to the point where instead of it just being that the elementary close contacts are being, are quarantining at home, that next week it's going to be the elementary and the high school close contacts are quarantining at home? Because then we have gone the wrong direction. If our goal is to keep kids healthy and in school, well, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're tipping the balance in either direction. So by treating all close contacts with the vaccinated protocol, you're tipping the balance towards more kids in school and more risk of spread in the school. But then you can treat them all unvaccinated, then you tip you
testing
maintain some
capacity.
risk, but you risk more in-home quarantine because of testing capacity.
Who would be in support of treating them as vaccinated?
I honestly don't know how I feel. I don't know. I don't know. I don't.
Are we allowed to ask questions? Can you go to the community for suggestions or guidance?
Not typically, but if you have a clarification question, it's quick.
If we aren't testing vaccinated people and the rate of vaccination increases at the end of the pediatric vaccine, would we have the capacity to test just the unvaccinated?
We don't test vaccinated now unless they want to. So right now, it sounds like you're having a discussion about testing even more people than is required already.
No, we're talking about eliminating the vaccinated protocol and treating everyone with the unvaccinated protocol, which would be daily testing.
Right, you're increasing your testing.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And that would not be good.
Right.
Right.
But if we stay on the path we're on now and whatever percentage gets vaccinated in elementary school, you have that many less kids to test and your testing capacity goes up.
But if you treat the unvaccinated as vaccinated, they can quarantine in school.
That's correct.
That's
the advantage.
correct.
Right.
Now, I know when we set these up, that there were, part of the thought process was vaccinated children or vaccinated people tend to be contagious for less days. Is that still the logic?
They went back to, instead of testing vaccinated people at 3 to 5, they're back to 5 to 7.
Okay.
But we have 120 kids signed up to be vaccinated on Friday, just from the elementary school. So that would be that many less students to test as we were close contacts.
Once they get their second vaccine, right? So we're talking like
Post-Christmas.
Christmas.
But back to Andy's point,
we're talking about treating them differently for 6 more weeks.
for 6 more weeks, and we're talking about kids who are competing academically to prepare themselves for life beyond the doors of Mineral Point High School, and giving kids opportunities that their classmates might not have because they chose not to get the shot for reasons that we don't want to touch.
You have, starting tomorrow, you have 11 days
of school prior to Thanksgiving break. So if you're looking at some kind of changes, you're looking at a window here, where you might get a sense of what's happening. When you come back from Thanksgiving, it's 18 days until the winter holiday break, the Christmas break. And you're looking at, vaccinations and when do they become effective or whatever. So if you're talking about going in a direction where we're not going to test anybody until day 5, potentially looking at twice between now and Thanksgiving break that you would test somebody.
And, there's no doubt we should reevaluate this plan once the elementary school has a chance to get fully vaccinated. No doubt about that. But obviously, we're talking about whether we should make any changes now.
Our original plan was 6 weeks after the availability of vaccine, correct?
Correct.
We could put a plan in place in December to have it effective when we return from school.
Correct.
Return from the holiday break.
Correct.
It's in line with our
That's
policy we've already approved.
That's not doing anything for right now.
It's not, that's 29 days of school. That if we don't take action tonight, that are impacted.
I think we would know before then too, if all of a sudden next week, if we do continue on the path we're on, and next week we end up now with 4 or 5 more classrooms or other groups that need to be, then we know, that little stopgap wasn't enough.
My point with the 11 days is you're looking at, if you make a switch and you're not going to test until day 5. There is a small window of time there where you can track, okay, what impact does that make? It's not a great amount of data that you're collecting, but has it made a difference? Has it made a difference on testing? Has it made a difference on spread?
Can I ask for clarification on something, please?
Sure.
If the elementary population is vaccinated to the extent that they are going to be, and breakthrough cases increase post that, fully vaccinated period, are we still treating the children differently that are vaccinated versus unvaccinated? Because while I understand the current breakthrough case at the elementary school is much, much lower than here, it stands to reason that it would be given the ratio of population.
Right.
So down the road, are we going to just continue to separate them based upon vaccination status, or can we agree at some point that it's smarter to group them together in whatever capacity that would mean?
Yeah. I think that's a question that we're going to have to answer both tonight and then. There's no doubt about it. And I think that we're really saying, what's the risk of an unvaccinated student to contract it and spread it versus a vaccinated person? And, it's obvious that anyone can get it regardless of vaccination status. And so I think we got to take a hard look at that.
I cannot imagine that as more people are vaccinated, that we will not see more breakthrough cases just because the nature of the population has changed. And I do think that ultimately it would be nice if we could treat vaccinated and unvaccinated the same. My short-term concern is, does that change at this point stress the testing resources to the point where we have even more kids out of school?
Well, that would be if we treat all students like
As
unvaccinated.
If we treated all students as unvaccinated, that would be stressing the testing resources.
Correct.
If we treat them all as vaccinated, we enhance the risk.
Enhance the risk, yeah.
So which is the right option?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to think about, we just have to think about the parents that are already nervous sending their kids to school with the current situation. And, you know, we should anticipate feedback, you know, if we, this would basically be, you know, relaxing protocols, and higher risk of spread in school. You know, we just have to be ready for parents to express their discomfort with that.
Whatever we do, we're gonna have parents. express
I know, I just wanted to just
I think about,
toss that out there. I mean,
I think about the fact that
we're in a lose-lose situation.
we were just told that
Being on board member.
the testing doesn't create a lot of the positives. The testing is being done because of symptoms, which are creating the positives. So it sounds like the additional testing that we're blaming is not creating a lot of the positives. We're testing for positives for people who feel they need to be tested. And that's where a majority of the positives are coming from, I believe, is what we were just told. So that leads me to lean towards, with the middle high population, which I think we can do a better job of creating less close contacts if we work at it, mask a little better, measure rooms, whatever we need to do. Because the testing isn't creating a lot more positives. It seems like we could test the day 5. If that's ultimately true. Most of the positives are coming from people who need to be tested because they're symptomatic and they're asking to be tested.
So I guess I'm gonna make a motion because we have a known problem that we have a testing capacity. So my motion would be in terms of quarantining, would be to treat unvaccinated as vaccinated and to eliminate testing for kids with no symptoms.
Is that across the board or is that specific to?
Across the board.
Obviously mask on, correct?
Correct, mask
Yes.
on.
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and second, Skelding and Sullivan. So just for point of clarification, so we're treating all close contacts under the vaccinated protocol on the mitigation plan,
Yes.
correct? And we will eliminate testing of all asymptomatic students and staff.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm just trying to wrap my mind, is that redundant or? Not. Are there any situations where?
I mean, he's saying if they're asymptomatic on day 5, you wouldn't test them.
Okay, so.
Based on his motion.
Yeah, so, you know. Basically, under the vaccinated protocol, they have an option to test at day 5, test out of the protocol at day 5. And that would only be relevant when masking is no longer universal.
We're ways from that.
I know we are. Am I speaking correctly, Jane? So if we eliminate testing of all asymptomatic contacts, that would be, that really, and we apply only the vaccinated protocol to all students. So that would be in
Who is
school.
gonna screen those kids?
So let's talk about that. So there would be symptom screening at the beginning of the day,
By who?
right? Well, how is it currently happening?
It's not. Parents are sending sick kids to school.
Okay,
And then they come to me.
so we're currently not screening for symptoms.
Well,
Even,
the parents were all sent an email on what symptoms to screen for.
Right.
And when to get kids home.
right? Okay,
And then they come to me when they're talking in the classroom.
right. Okay, the other And then the other significant thing about eliminating the unvaccinated protocol is that students can immediately continue extracurriculars,
Say that again?
right? So
While masked, correct?
while masked. So if we eliminated the unvaccinated protocol,
Well, I know the WIAA doesn't follow that.
right? So that was my next question was WIA guidelines, which we adopted for the
The
fall.
8th day with a negative test is when you resume if you're unvaccinated for WIAA,
Okay,
just like what we're doing.
okay. So that would still apply, but the kids would be able to come to school without testing. But and parents and students would be in charge of screening themselves for symptoms like they're currently responsible for, but like you say, it's not going very well.
No,
Okay,
and instead, then instead of just doing the testing in the morning and getting it done, I'm having kids come out throughout the day calling and saying, hey, looks like they have this, can I test them?
Right.
That I think that will have almost just as much testing maybe, especially in the winter months with other viruses going around and more
Right.
time making those phone calls.
right. I mean, that's definitely the risk with this change.
I think looking at the protocol and just saying it's the matrix and protocols that we have and saying it's a failure, I don't know that I would agree with that myself. Is it a failure or do we have an outbreak? And I think the answer is we have an outbreak and it's catching it. And yes, I wish we'd have all the kids in school all the time, but why don't we give it a chance to see if it works, if this break works. And if it doesn't, and it's not sustainable, then we go and try something new. But we haven't really been given the chance to let the protocol work right now.
Well,
in my mind.
to be clear, I wasn't calling the protocol a failure.
No, but
I said,
the
I said we are failing.
right.
We have unmasked staff creating chaos throughout the district. And that's a failure. And that's,
I was unaware. Are there unmasked staff?
to my knowledge, there has been, and have created issues. That's a failure.
Yes, I would call that a failure.
That's what I want to clean up, not this. And I get back to the point that I
Yeah.
don't think we can treat the students differently, especially at the high school level who are competing academically for the same thing. I don't know if I can get on board with the asymptomatic, because we're asking a lot of people, to be honest, that to this point have proven not to always care about the rules. We have students showing up at non-school practices that are supposed to be on quarantine, but nobody knows because we don't share that data with other
President
coaches.
Trump has to get rid of the dirty.
Sorry, that's okay.
So I think we're relying on a little bit of honesty there for me to support that, but I think I can support the fifth day test.
Yeah, could you support something like at the high school, middle school building? All students test on day 5 and we try it for a period to see what happens, to see if maybe something along those lines. I'm not quite ready to go with what's on the table,
If we get a
but I'm
second,
open-minded to something we could.
Right, we do need to vote on this motion,
Right.
correct? But, it's,
So in what you're describing, though, there would be a 5-day period where people wouldn't be tested
And they'd be at school.
at school and potentially spreading. And
Yeah.
then maybe the following week, we'd have to close because now there's more people sick.
Yep.
So,
And so there's certainly risk, and we want to talk about if you're a close contact, you wear that mask anytime you're in the building, regardless of whether it's a school activity or a sports practice. And
But I mean, to that point, they could also test positive on day 4 after an exposure of 4 days. In school for 4 days and leaving school, taking their mask off, going to the volleyball game and spitting all over each other for 45 minutes.
And right, he's back. So just to clarify, this elimination of vaccinated versus unvaccinated applies only to in-school attendance.
Right.
Right, so extracurriculars, the WA guidelines would still apply.
Right.
Okay. Anyone else want to comment or have a question about this motion?
You might want to clarify that our guidelines should still apply because our guidelines for vaccinated students are tougher. WIA considers vaccinated students no close contacts. So we want a little tougher on that. So
that's currently not in the motion right now, any specification. So that's probably something that could be specified if the mitigation plan needs to be revised. We can reflect those rules for extracurriculars. Okay. Angie, you wanted to read the motion?
So the motion is to treat unvaccinated as vaccinated for students and staff during school hours with masks on.
And eliminate testing of asymptomatic contacts.
Okay. Skelding,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
no.
Eisner,
No.
Janetka,
No.
Dunn,
No. Okay, that motion fails. Someone want to make a new motion?
I make a motion that we keep the policies as is and review it at the next regular board meeting. And that would give a chance for us to try this if it actually does break things up. Having these classrooms closed this week. I think it gives us a chance to maybe see if we can make it work. So my motion is no change. I don't even know that we would vote on that.
Yeah.
So
that's
motion repealed.
That doesn't address anything about the disparity between our vaccinated versus unvaccinated populations.
No, we wasted 2.5 hours and accomplished nothing. So
I don't think we've wasted anything, Gary. I think we're having a discussion.
I would agree.
I think we have to stop looking at time spent discussing and learning as wasting time.
Okay, is there?
I will.
Okay.
Make a motion that at the middle high school making masking mandatory during school and eliminating the vaccinated, unvaccinated difference and using the vaccinated protocol for all students during the school day.
Okay.
We'll see the first part again, please.
It made masking mandatory in case we fall below. And all of a sudden, 6 feet's the new threshold and we have 70 close contacts because we're 6 feet apart.
So that's just at the middle high school.
Yes.
Okay.
So during the 14 days after the last exposure or until a negative COVID test is obtained after day 5 of exposure is when they need to remain masked and socially distanced both indoors and when unable to socially distance outdoors. And then monitor for symptoms for 14 days. So there's no testing requirement at any point based on that approach.
Not to test at day 5.
It is not required. At day 5, they can test out of having to wear a mask if masks were optional both for school and or extracurriculars. You've just removed testing from the middle school,
I
high school
revise
building.
that motion.
But you also stated that masking is mandatory.
Yes, so there's no incentive for them to take the test.
Or could we amend this for athletics? It will create more than one testing schedule because to return to athletics, you need to have a negative, if you're unvaccinated, you need a negative test on day 6 or after.
If you're unvaccinated, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Just test everybody at day 5.
But we have to test them at day 6 or anybody who's an athlete for WIAA.
But those students were being tested every day before.
They're going to test on day 5 and day 6.
That allows us to test potential asymptomatic breakthrough and never gets tested.
Everybody gets tested, and our vaccinated kids today who are not compelled to test by WIAA guidelines are now required to test,
To stay in school quarantine.
to stay in school quarantine. In the past, they weren't. But we know that breakthrough cases are a thing, so that's. What is the date of our December meeting?
I believe it's the 10th.
That's a month, including a short week for Thanksgiving.
Sorry, 13th.
13th.
10th is a Friday, 13th.
Talk it out.
What if there was just a motion to just have, like, say my motion was in place, we kept the first part, but didn't change the testing.
I need help with that. You gotta like really lay it out for me. It's been a long day.
Yep. So if we got rid of the vaccinated, unvaccinated
Okay,
categories,
okay,
so we treated everybody the same
yep.
As vaccinated.
as vaccinated. That's it.
Okay, but then that means that there's no testing requirement for the high school. Well, for whatever building that right now for vaccinated students, if both students are masked, a close contact of 3 feet or less may attend school and sports or co-curricular activities masked and social distance indoors and masked when I be unable to social distance outdoors. During the 14 days after the last exposure or until a negative COVID test was obtained on day 5, and they have to monitor symptoms for 14 days. So there is no testing requirement at any point,
But masks are in place.
but masks are in place.
Unless you're unvaccinated and need to return to co-curriculars.
Unless you're unvaccinated and for WIA, for what if it was, we treat them all at a hybrid where we treat everybody the same. If you are a close contact, you're required to mask. And everybody is tested on day 5 or 6. We can discuss that because of the WIA guidelines. But everybody tests, or you quarantine outside of school for the full 14 days. With less testing, some of these kids have been tested day after day after day. It still allows us to test everybody, even asymptomatic cases that have been close contacts. I don't know, I'm not necessarily in love with it. Just spitballing.
I just can't see not doing anything and waiting a month.
I understand. So if you're requiring testing on a certain day, say day 6,
Yeah, or the first school day thereafter, right? We'd have to have some language in there around that, right?
at least day 6 or after, you could say that. Then, and so what would be the alternative if the parent declines testing?
For the full
It would be the
period would
11th
be at
day.
home.
11th day is when you can come back without any testing if you remain asymptomatic.
Okay, so yeah, I'll return to school on the 11th day.
You still have to mask the 14th.
I'm not in love with it.
Treating them as vaccinated.
Oh. Well, if you're vaccinated, then you don't have to test at all.
That's what the motion was, treating them as vaccinated.
To treat, it's trying to find the balance between, because we know we have COVID, or we have vaccinated kids who are having breakthroughs. And we know that there seems to be what some people see as an unfair burden put on unvaccinated kids with the repeated testing. So treating everyone the same with a single test or potentially a pair of tests, is that a middle ground that we could live with?
And then you're putting a burden on people who did get vaccinated so that they wouldn't have to test.
People who, yes, there would be testing in place for people who today would not need to test.
So I guess what's the solution?
I mean,
I guess
You can't, but.
No, I mean, I have to enforce it, so I have to ask the questions on how it would work.
I know.
Because things will come up, different scenarios come up. It's not all in a 4-page paper. Crazy stuff happens every single day. It's not straightforward. And I have to be prepared on how I'm supposed to interpret that.
I know, not attacking you, I'm trying to attack the process, and we have a problem at hand, and
It's very frustrating that every lever we pull creates a problem, potentially.
Yeah.
And it's just really what problems are we willing to tolerate and live with? That's really what we're debating. But yeah, we have to decide if we request a test at any point, what does it mean to decline testing?
I'm just thinking, a decline test means you stay at home, but if you're vaccinated, we're gonna make vaccinated kids stay at home, and then you're we're treating them differently again, and the amount of feedback we've gotten about treating them equal, I don't know. I'm out. Somebody else go.
Okay, so here's my question to that for the unvaxxed or for the people who want to refuse testing. What happens when these kids go to school on day 1 through 4 and get to day 5 when it's testing day and say, you're not testing me. Now you've been in school for the first 4 days and now refusing testing. How fair is that? If we're talking about fair.
Good point. And when I hadn't thought of.
Right.
Right, it's like you would have to provide consent at day 1 to be tested on day 6 to solve that problem.
If we're at an impasse, do things just stay in place tonight? Like, and I certainly don't feel like it's a waste, but this isn't going well. I don't feel like the conversation's been a waste. I just don't know that we're coming up with any solution that we can get to a majority on.
Can I make a motion to table this to the next regular scheduled board meeting in December?
Yes, you can make that motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this topic till the December 13th board meeting.
Good second?
I second reluctantly, but not seeing a path forward at this moment.
You don't have to vote for it if you second it.
I second.
Okay, we've got Janetka Eisner to table the mitigation plan till the December meeting. Any further discussion?
You were gonna come up with something. In a month. That solves this problem.
Who's to say the numbers ain't gonna be worse in a month?
So if they're worse in a month, then there's a bigger problem. I don't know that tabling it is the right thing to do, but I think then we can make a decision right now if we want to keep discussing it or not tonight.
Fair.
We'll have an odd number of people in December, Gary.
What's that got to do with anything?
Well, if we vote tonight and we're split, and I'm not even sure that we'd be split if we voted on anything, but that's what will be different in December.
And tell the people who signed up.
I'm trying to find the humor, the light side is, we'll have an odd number of people.
Well, what will be different in December is every elementary school kid who wants to be vaccinated will be vaccinated, which lowers the overall risk in the district. We will have gone through a week of exceeding testing capacity, dealing with in-home quarantine, and all the trials and tribulations that have dealt with that, and see how that impacted cases and close contacts. You know, hopefully, without making any promises, we will have lower amount of cases in the community a month from now. And so the situation will probably be a lot different, and we'll have learned a lot more about our protocol. So, and I anticipate the decision to be made at the regular meeting at a minimum would be, what are we going to do to start the second semester? I mean, we can make other decisions, you know, that are more immediate if people feel strongly about it, but that's the main value of looking at it in December.
But in the meantime, we have the continued disparity between vaccinated and unvaccinated.
Correct.
We continue to have kids out of school when they are close contact, especially at the elementary school where that in-person learning is so important.
Correct.
I mean, it's.
Well, I mean, we had one motion that failed. We can propose another motion, but you know, and I appreciate the effort trying to find a good motion. And if you still got one on the tip of your tongue, you can vote against tabling this plan. But there hasn't been one.
I guess what prevents, I just closed it, but so if masking is in place, whether it's vaccinated or unvaccinated, and they're at least 3 feet apart, they can quarantine in school, correct?
If they're greater than 3 feet apart,
No close contact.
they're not in close contact.
Okay. So
And maybe that's just even like a redouble, or, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk, a redoubling of trying to make sure people are 3 feet apart, or we think they are. Just like you always check your taxes before you get to bed. You know, going and checking to make sure there's a space. I think it's worth a shot, you know, to Andy's point. I think that's, and again, making sure kids are wearing masks properly and.
Any other comments?
Call the question.
Okay, Andy?
Janetka,
Yes.
Skelding,
yes.
Sullivan,
No.
Bush,
No.
Heisner,
Yes.
None.
No. Motion
All right.
fails. All right,
Let's hear those
let's hear a
ideas.
motion.
You know what, if we, sorry. If we're requiring a test on, let's say it's day 4. We're treating all the students.
Mhm.
We're just asking a different set of students to take a test they weren't taking before, while other students were taking 7 tests. We're treating them the same.
I'm okay with that, especially given COVID or given breakthroughs. But to the point that was made by somebody outside the board, what if they go to school for the 4 days and then say, yeah, not tested? Not doing it.
So I'm wondering if we move it up to day 4.
If you treat everybody the same, then it doesn't matter vaccinated or unvaccinated, and you push that date back past day 4 in order to return to athletics or in order to return to a co-curricular that's after school. So if I'm here days 1, 2, 3, 4, and I say I'm not testing, whether I'm vaccinated or unvaccinated, won't matter if that day gets now pushed back to day 8. You're not allowed to do anything until day 8 or day 10 or whatever that day is.
And then that makes sense for kids who are engaged in co-curriculars, but if you're not, there's no hook.
But you talked about not testing kids that were asymptomatic or not, you know.
Right.
So you're still not doing that. But if a student does develop symptoms, then you would test that student, whether it's a breakthrough or that student is an unvaccinated student, you would still be testing that student.
thinking halfway through ideas and then I don't like them, so.
I guess what's the problem we're gonna try to solve? Testing capacity?
Well, is it, are we concerned about equality or about testing capacity or about risk? Because the answer is yes. So I don't know. Which one are you willing to give up? Sorry, that was really snarky. I didn't mean that as snarky. I meant
Take it personal.
okay.
I think you have to have equality. Of course. Reduce risk where we can without pushing kids out of school. Because that, to me, that was the main theme from before I was on the board till when I started, like, kids are gonna be in school.
In school and safe.
Right.
And two goals.
There's a virus that seems very low risk to the elementary population. Seems like we're finding ways to, I don't know.
I know, just, we're finding ways to keep kids out of school.
Yeah.
I
Let's
agree
find
for
ways to
risk to
keep
children, but not necessarily to people that come down. So.
That's right. The
The
kids
community
are,
as a
the kids are vectors for the spread. You know, and that's part of the problem, but we're getting a little bit off track, but I mean. You got nothing? You got?
I'm out.
Okay.
Move on.
Okay, I mean, if there's no motion and you don't want me to give you any more time, we can just move on. Bush,
Give me 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I'll give you 60 seconds.
Thank you.
No, I'm just kidding.
We're gonna start with 10
Yes,
minutes.
that's what I was saying.
Make a motion. Started, that counts. That we eliminate the vaccinated, unvaccinated protocol. And enforce a protocol where all close contacts for in-school quarantine purposes are tested on day 4. Refusal to test would result in what's the quarantine? They quarantine at home.
It's a 10-day quarantine.
Yeah.
In the remainder of the 10-day quarantine at home.
So eliminate the vaccinated, unvaccinated protocol.
Fourth building.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm basing a little of that on the fact that the extra testing is not what we were told was, it's not creating most of the additional positives. That seems like it would ease Jane's pain quite a bit.
Can you speak up, Andy?
I can try.
Thank you. So restate that, please. Eliminate the vaccinated, unvaccinated protocol.
Create a protocol where all close contacts must test negative on day 4. Failure to test would result in finishing the 10-day quarantine at home for in-school quarantine purposes. This wouldn't have anything to do with the WIA policies.
Is this for all grades? Is this just for up here?
I mean, if we're truly not getting a lot of extra positives from all the additional testing,
I'm seeing a hand.
I guess I want to know what the significance of the day 4 would be. And then the additional testing for those who are in extracurriculars. And then I guess like what you said about the refusal of testing, so then they would not be able to participate in their athletics on day 8, they have to wait till day 11.
And day 4 is just to eliminate some of the days they would be in school before they refuse the test. Because the concern with 5 or 6 was they'd been there. So, I mean, if it's on a Monday, then they're there for 3 days. If it's on a Wednesday, we can catch them, or Thursday, we can catch them Monday morning. Because we've also had positives emerge on the 3rd or 4th day of testing, correct?
Yeah, but I guess, well, it's usually on like day 0, so we catch them right away because we're like, okay, they're in the same classroom and we didn't even know they were positive. Maybe they were patient 0 in the classroom. But the incubation period and the reason for waiting until days 5 to 7 is, it was 3 to 5 for vaccinated people, but they went back to 5 to 7. That would be the more appropriate time and had people test positive on days 6 and 7. But then you're that far, again, I'm just trying to think of it scientifically and then also in practice, how it would look. And if we're going to wait until day 5 or wait till day 6, then, because then we can only do the 1 test. And I'm just trying to think it out, how it would play out.
Day 6 makes your life easier.
It would be 1 test versus 2. I worry honestly, about vaccinated athletes being forced to test. They don't want to test. Vaccinated or not, they don't want to test. So I worry about forcing that for people who made the decision to get vaccinated so they wouldn't have to.
They were told in July by Dr. Fox that they would not have to test. That's why a lot of them went and got vaccinated.
But what happens if, and this is an if, but we're at a certain percentage, I think we've established 10% breakthrough cases already. When our vaccinated population goes up, if we get to a point where there's 30% of our cases are breakthrough, are we still going to say, nope, we're not testing?
Well, I don't foresee that happening in the next couple of weeks. I mean, I don't foresee having that kind of great data over the next couple of weeks, 2 weeks. I would love to just get back to where we were able to keep everybody in school. I know right now this is not desirable to have so many elementary kids out, but it's also not desirable to have 3/4 of positive cases in the classroom. And then a lot of parents are just choosing to keep their kids home, and they don't have, before they said that they had to stay home, they were already choosing it. They're like, well, my kid is a sitting duck. So I think we need to remember that, yes, we all want them in school, but we're so close to this vaccine. I can't fathom that we're changing something to be more lax when we're just so close to this goal that so many people have been waiting for, and would probably be very much okay with becoming way less strict after they've had that chance. That is so important to so many people that I just feel like we've come so far just to take it away in just the nick of time. It feels very odd.
So is that comment specific then to the elementary school? Since
Yes, in
the-
6th grade.
And 6th,
Yes.
yes, I'm
I
sorry.
feel very strongly about that for those who have not had the chance.
That's,
Can I just ask you-
That
So-
6th grade
Real
bubble
quick
gets me.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just want a clarification that if the elementary school moves forward and gets vaccinated in order to not have to test, and then we're finding a month from now that our cases are still rising because we're testing for symptoms or testing the not vaccinated, I would think that there would be even more of a pushback from that grade level to then make the switch then because they got vaccinated. I'm not sure I understand trying to make that decision based on how vaccinated people feel. I guess I'm just trying to clarify if you feel the same way. I know I'm asking you to look at your thoughts in the future, but if you feel the same way afterwards and cases are still going and people are vaccinated and the concern is the community spread, are you still going to feel the same way about asking vaccinated people to be tested if there is a component that's contributing to the community spread within the school?
Like
Vaccinated.
people, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the breakthrough infections we're seeing are people who got vaccinated so long ago. And so I think we probably wouldn't have that problem in the near future. And I would like to just at least get us through.
That's
And I
why I asked, I was
can't
just trying to
Yeah,
understand.
I won't predict on that. I just would hate to make it this far.
We certainly need to follow, the breakthrough rates with vaccinated people and weigh that against, how's that gonna change? How are the breakthrough infection rates gonna change once people get a third dose and, this new age range gets freshly vaccinated, for lack of a better word, where they would theoretically have a strong antibody response, not 9 months ago. Okay. Member Bush, we were back to your motion.
I'm gonna withdraw my motion. I apologize. That's not,
Okay.
I don't have a good answer.
Okay, is there any other motion on the table? I think we've given this a good chew on the cud.
Maybe we look for
Hopefully no
some,
one's still listening to me.
maybe look for some feedback in the next week. And we could potentially put the vaccinated versus unvaccinated back on the agenda a week from now. Maybe the unvaccinated are okay getting tested once instead of every day to come to school compared to,
If you want this on the agenda next week, you gotta let me know. Not right now, but the agenda is getting posted tomorrow noon, right?
that's the problem that's not going away. When the elementary students get vaccinated. Is the vaccinated, unvaccinated problem doesn't go away. So let's try and find some. We can't do it by next week probably, but let's try and find some middle ground by December. We all have outspoken parents of unvaccinated students who feel they are being discriminated against. Let's communicate and see if lesser testing is an option, like a test on day 6.
So for just the
They would
unvaccinated,
obviously still be treated differently, but they wouldn't have to test
it wouldn't be as severe.
every day. I don't know. It just seems like my goal is to get them in school and to get them the same education as the vaccinated students who are competing for the same things.
And maybe that's something we focus on, is making progress towards equality as opposed to trying to solve this whole puzzle tonight.
And the best thing, like we talked about, we can do is to create as few close contacts as possible. Go out of our way to get back to focusing on not having 17 close contacts per positive.
Okay,
Let's
let's go to food service.
The USDA sent out a requirement. There's a really great formula that is used to determine the price of adult lunches that are not compensated or reimbursed. Long story short, the current price of an adult lunch is $4.20. We always said this at the beginning over the summer prior to the school year. We are required to adjust that price to $4.65 for adult lunch. It needs board approval because you set those prices, but really it's not really up for debate. If you wanted to set it at $5, you could set it at $5, but we minimally have to adjust it to $4.65.
I'll take a motion to approve this increase in meal pricing.
I'll make a motion that we approve the adult lunch price to $4.65 per USDA guideline.
Second.
Who's second?
Heisner, Janetka. Any other discussion?
There's much to discuss.
I just have to ask.
Yep, I know.
Okay, call the question, Angie.
Heisner,
Yes.
Janetka,
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Next.
I made everyone aware of the water softener that needed to be replaced and the salt tank. It is about $5,000. The bill is in, the bill's payable. It is $8,061 is the price. It's on page 26 of your board book. Very top of the page. Capital water softener. It needs to be replaced. There is no repair. It was repaired once several years ago. I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and it's to the point where it cannot be repaired.
Motion, I'll make the motion, we approve this purchase or repair.
I'll second.
Sullivan, Heisner. Any discussion? I just want to clarify, this comes out of the capital maintenance budget under
Correct.
Roger's budget?
Yep,
Correct.
yes, yep, there's no other
Which we
fund.
recently replenished.
Correct.
Angie?
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Heisner,
Yes.
Janetka,
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Next, I'll take a motion to approve the credit card statement of activity and bills payable.
Make a motion to approve the credit card statement. Bills payable.
I'll second.
Any discussion, questions? Okay, Angie?
Janetka,
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Heisner,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Okay, our next meeting is next Monday at 6:30. The only thing on the agenda currently is selecting a new board member.
Correct.
Meeting is at
6:30 in this room.
Can we post, that? Are you available after next Monday's meeting?
Yeah.
Can we post the finance committee meeting at 7?
Sure.
That night?
Yeah.
Or immediately following.
Yeah, immediately. I don't know if you can post immediately following. So
I think we have in the past.
Okay,
done that
perfect.
sort of-
Yeah. Being vague about the start time.
Yep.
Okay.
If you're gonna put on the agenda to discuss this again next Monday night, you have to put a time limit on it.
It's currently not on the agenda.
That's a say.
Oh, right.
Who doesn't want to get into numbers at 9:45?
The only other possibility is we have had applicants for the part-time night custodial position at the elementary school.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there could potentially be a candidate being brought forward. That would be right now the only other possible agenda item down for next month.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Thank you, everyone online.